Hello everyone. Tonight we step into a historical era praised as glorious, but in reality, it's a chilling nightmare of hunger, cold, and betrayal. Forget the image of Napoleon gallantly riding a horse, mapping the world with his gaze, and winning to triumphant music. The truth is, if you lived in that time, you might die because of a torn shoe, a moldy piece of bread, or simply because no one remembers you ever existed. Before you lean back comfortably, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely enjoy the content I share. And leave a comment, letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's fascinating to see viewers from all over the world. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some background noise, and let's dive into tonight's journey together. Imagine arriving in France in 1805, where a sneeze in the wrong place could get you dragged to the front lines before you even have time to put on your underwear. This morning, you woke up with the simple hope of eating a stale piece of bread and fixing the chicken coop door. But before you could scratch your nose, your door is kicked open by two foul-smelling uniformed men, reeking of tobacco smoke, holding a list, their eyes devoid of emotion. One points at you, the other drags you out. No summons, no choice, no I object. You shout, "You've got the wrong person," but they only respond with a slap that carries the stench of onions and authority. And just like that, you, a farmer who can't read, can't fight, and definitely doesn't know where Austria is, suddenly become part of Emperor Napoleon's invincible army. 3 hours later, you're thrown into a training yard like a pig dragged from the market, hands trembling, feet numb, and no one bothers to explain what's happening. The man to your left vomits from heat stroke. The one to your right tries to swallow his tears as his new shoes are snatched away. You smell sweat mixed with gunpowder and something like rotting meat. Amid the chaos of shouts, practice shots, and gasping breaths, an officer approaches, tall, scarred face, voice as cold as a tax collector's stare. "Congratulations," he growls. "You now belong to the Empire." You want to ask why, but then remember, here, questions only earn you push-ups. So you stand there, holding a splintered wooden rifle, wearing a hat with flaps like a water trough, staring into a future warped by orders, mud, and a stolen dream. Tonight, you'll sleep with 3 strangers on a pile of straw, eat a piece of bread harder than an altar, and pray you're not thrown to the front lines by morning. This is the beginning, and if you think it can't get worse, welcome to Napoleon's era. Because the next thing you need to know is, no one here is volunteering. The idea of fighting for the homeland sounds glorious when sung by a clean uniformed choir in a Paris theatre. But in reality, in this barren training yard where the wind carries the stench of feet and curses, here people enlist because they're forced, threatened, coerced, or simply too hungry to resist. You were nabbed while shoveling cow dung. The guy moaning to your right was tricked by an officer promising bread. The oldest man in the platoon, grey hair, trembling hands, came to see his son off, only to be shoved onto the cart himself. In Napoleon's reign, conscription, mandatory military service, wasn't an invitation. It was a giant hook cast across every village alley. Are you 20, 30 with teeth and legs? Off you go. Missing teeth, one leg lame, might still be useful. Worst case, you'll be target practice. No one checks your background. No one asks if you can shoot. They just glance at your muscles, sniff your chest, and if it still expands, congratulations, you're about to learn how to die. The next morning, still foggy, you're lined up with 200 men, most of whom were civilians yesterday, now shivering in ill-fitting uniforms, staring at each other like they're all lost in hell. The training officer steps out, a fat man with a neck like a handmill, holding a whip longer than an adult's arm. He snarls, "Welcome to your new home. Here everyone's equal, all garbage, until I say otherwise." After a 3-minute speech of 30 words and 70 growls, you're split into groups and thrown into the first training, running. No names, no roll call, just the whip cracking unerringly on thighs, paired with the shout, "You run like a gangrenous sheep." You try to run, but your shoes are loose, the ground is slick, and your brain is asking, how did I end up here? Some faint, some vomit, some wet themselves. No one stops. Stopping means the whip. Next comes morale management. The platoon stands at attention for 3 hours. Move, 50 push-ups. Yawn, double that. Snore too loudly last night. Push-ups plus 20. No reason. just punishment. You start to understand here, you don't think, you endure. By afternoon, you learn to load a musket. Do it wrong, a rifle butt to the shoulder. Do it right. No one says anything. The problem is, the issued muskets often have broken triggers, jammed barrels, or have been chewed by dogs. A tall guy's hands shake as he aims at a target. It fires before he pulls the trigger. Luckily, the barrel was pointed down. The officer just laughs. Good, at least you'll kill yourself before you harm anyone else. At night, you don't feel like a soldier. You feel like a piece of meat that's been beaten, seasoned, and ready to be thrown onto the fire. The commander's voice echoes in your head. The Empire doesn't need thinkers. The Empire needs shooters, deers, and silencers. As you close your eyes, the snores, groans, and soft sobs from the other side of the barracks blend into a symphony of despair. And tomorrow, another lesson, learning to accept that your life is worth one bullet, if you're lucky, a real one. In truth, you still have much to learn before you earn the honor of catching a bullet. Like the next morning, when you're jolted awake by the piercing scream of a camp overseer, his voice like a razor scraping your eardrums and dragged from the straw like a pig to the slaughter. You barely pull up your pants before being shoved into a line outside a dark grey tent with charcoal scrawled words, barber and brainwash room. The first man enters with neat long hair, a glimmer of hope on his face. 2 minutes later, he emerges bald, pale, and with eyes like he's seen death in a wedding dress. Your turn. You step inside. A barber, no, sorry, a butcher in a blood-stained apron, points you to sit. No name, no greeting, no cloth. His clippers clack like a starving crab, and before you can ask what's happening, your hair falls like winter leaves. Not gently falling like he's shaving weeds from a cursed field. You lose your hair, but not just your hair. At that moment, an officer approaches with a roster. You're number 612 from now on. Hometown, irrelevant. Real name, erased. Surname, unnecessary. If anyone asks, you're Bernard, not your real name. I don't care. And just like that, you lose your name, your identity, the sense of being someone, your old name, the one your mother gave you, your lover whispered, your teacher called when you disrupted class. Now just an echo fading in the windy tent. Leaving the barber tent, you're handed a uniform, if you can call it that. A coat longer than your knees, ash-colored pants patched with brown cloth, and wooden shoes that clomp like a coffin on stone. Wrong size. Tuh. No socks. Rip your undershirt to wrap your feet. Hat. A bicorn reeking of sweat from the French Revolution, warped like the heart of someone told they're marching to Austria. And so you head to the yard, looking like a hastily packed clearance item from Napoleon's army. After uniform distribution comes the first briefing. An officer stands on a platform, booming. From this moment, your body is the Empire's property. Your thoughts are the enemy. Your will must surrender. Mistake equals sign whip. Error equals sign starvation. Disobedience equals sign execution. Everything else, irrelevant. You're still processing the first sentence when you hear body is property, and a chill runs down your spine. Not from the wind, but because you're truly owned. The worst part, you have no right to protest. No talking, unless questioned. No writing letters without permission. No leaving ranks. Even if, well, you're not crazy enough to try. That night, a soldier whispers, "Know what tomorrow is?" You shake your head. He smirks. Weapons training means bullets, and someone's losing a hand. You ask, "What about me?" He replies, "You still have your head. That's luckier than most." You turn away, eyes fixed on the hole-riddled tent roof, where stars seem to gaze down with pity. Before slipping into fitful sleep, interrupted by snores and groans, you realize you've not only lost your hair, name, and rights, you're starting to lose your sense of being human. And tomorrow, what else will fall away? The answer comes sooner than you think. You're barely awake when you're yanked up by a whistle like a goose being strangled. An officer screams in your face, "Get dressed. Move before I skin you out of here." The problem is, you're already dressed, in the same baggy, damp, foul-smelling uniform that reeks like a dead rat in a vinegar vat. But no matter, because today you'll meet what they call the glory of war, your personal weapon. Or rather, a hunk of iron twice the weight of your arm, rusted like a ship's nail, with a chance of backfiring equal to your odds of getting dysentery on campaign. The gun introduction happens on a muddy field, where each man is handed a musket engraved with numbers from Louis XVI's era. You take it with trembling hands, as if receiving the executioner's knife. A bearded sergeant stands before the group, holding up the rifle like a kindergarten teacher, showing a dance move, and growls. This is the Charleville M1777, accurate up to 15 meters. Beyond that, pray. Then he laughs, a laugh that makes you unsure whether to laugh or cry. You learn to load, bite the cartridge, pour powder into the barrel, drop in the lead ball, ram it down, prime the pan, cock the hammer. 6 steps. Sounds simple, but in practice, your hands are slick with sweat, powder spills everywhere, and you ignite the primer in your hand because you held it wrong. Smoke bursts like New Year's fireworks, making the platoon jump back. Sulfur stings your nose, making you cough until you want to vomit your empty stomach. The sergeant steps over, says nothing, just picks up your rifle and slams the butt into your gut. To help you remember, he says, you double over, swallowing pain and tears. During practice, a young soldier beside you, hands shaking, pulls the trigger too early before lowering the barrel. The bullet shoots skyward, piercing a nearby tent where the squad leader was relieving himself. A scream echoes. Luckily, only his pants were torn, but that doesn't stop the punishment. The soldier is slapped until he forgets his new Bernard name, then forced to crawl around the camp while clutching his half-loaded rifle. Amid this chaos, a new fear dawns, not dying by enemy bullets, but by your own gun. One guy swears his rifle exploded at the butt. Another claims his barrel is slightly bent, making bullets veer left. Everyone agrees, at any moment, a pop could come, not toward the enemy, but into the shooter's foot. Your uniform doesn't improve. Pants so wide, they need 2 loops of rope to tie. The coat is short like a child's. Many stuff rags, cut sleeves, or steal buttons from dead soldiers' coats to patch theirs. A big guy near you rips his pants crotch while picking up a bullet, a tear as loud as artillery hitting pride. Everyone laughs. He cries. You're ordered to stand at attention for hours, with the rifle on your shoulder. The sun blazes. Sweat streams under the thick coat. Your bicorn tilts, burning your ear. A fly lands on your eye. You blink reflexively. Result? The sergeant yells, "Slipping." Huh? 30 push-ups. You try to explain, but the reply is a light whip on your calf. A fly's an enemy if you're weak. The afternoon is target practice. Each gets 1 bullet. Hit the target. A nod of approval. Miss, you're scolded for wasting ammo. Gun doesn't fire. Redo the process in front of everyone. Your gun doesn't fire. You pale. The sergeant roars. Again, fast. Your hands shake. You ram the rod into the barrel. It jams. You pull it out. Try again. Hands slip. The rod falls. You bend to pick it up. The gun falls too. The camp holds its breath. No explosion. Lucky? Not quite. The sergeant steps closer. You know what's coming. That night, you sit in the dark with the rifle on your lap, wiping it with a damp rag as if polishing boots for a noble's ball, though you know tomorrow it might explode in your face. Around you, whispers rise. Anyone know if these guns shoot straight? Wrong guy to ask. Mine tried to commit suicide last week. You look up at the sky, where a crescent moon peeks through grey clouds, and think, I never thought I'd die by my own gun, before even seeing the enemy. But you won't die tonight. Not yet. Tomorrow you'll learn to attack, and that's when they teach you. Survival isn't about weapons, but running fast enough when your comrades lose control. Training, you thought, would turn you into a soldier. A structured, disciplined lesson, like in books. But here, under scorching sun, and shouts from all directions, you quickly learn, training is just a series of random tests, to see if you'll die before reaching the front. Every survival skill from home, like hiding from your mother, to avoid chopping firewood, now becomes your lifeline. That morning, you're woken by drums and curses in 3 languages, all targeting your poor existence. A sergeant tosses a rifle into your hands like throwing a bone to a dog, then points to a muddy field. Run, aim, shoot, run again, fall behind, die. No one dares ask questions. The first guy who did this morning got kicked in the rear and is now lying by the water trough, possibly dead. You run. Feet sink into the mud, shoes sucking like they're cursed, the rifle slamming your back, heavy as a politician's promise. At the shooting point, you're breathless, hands shaking, sweat pouring like you're bathing. The sergeant screams, "Shoot the target." Now, before I shoot you, you fire. The bullet vanishes somewhere in the sky. No one knows where. Maybe it killed a duck nearby. You don't get results. Just crawl through a rusty wire fence where sharp metal spikes jab the ground like traps. Someone ahead screams, stabbed in the gut. No one stops. Stopping is weak. Weakness is elimination. Elimination means disappearing without reason. No one asks. At noon you learn close combat. They call it bayonet dueling. Sounds romantic. Hardly. You face a guy twice your size, holding a rifle with a bayonet, eyes like he's woken from a murder dream. Before you react, the bayonet's at your throat. You fall into the mud, pain so sharp you forget you haven't eaten breakfast. The sergeant passes, sighs and judges. If you die that fast on the battlefield, wrap yourself up so others don't trip. You don't know whether to cry or laugh, but you stand, rejoin the line, and train again. By afternoon you learn formation marching, meaning you and 19 others march in sync on uneven ground like a beast's spine, keeping ranks, not stepping on feet, holding the rifle correctly, and processing orders like your brain has 16 parallel threads. Someone drops their hat, slapped. Someone sneezes, called a weak-lunged soldier. A guy behind you slips, falling on another. Both are punished with push-ups mid-march. You try not to laugh, but your lips tremble from exhaustion, not amusement. You no longer have energy to find anything funny. Dinner that night, the reward for training, is a bowl of soup with 3 peas, 1 celery stalk, and a liquid the color of wound wash. You eat it all, not because it's good, because not eating means hunger. Hunger means fainting. Fainting means a beating. A beating means no sleep. No sleep means slow death. You learn that on day 3 of training, not from a teacher. Your body taught you. At night, you crawl into the tent, seeking a spot free of mud or cockroaches. A soldier nearby whispers, "Hear that noise." You listen. A distant scream, then sporadic gunfire. He sighs. New guys practicing shooting yesterday. One slipped. Probably someone lost an eye. You stay silent. Tomorrow, you handle real bullets for the first time, and if you misfire, even slightly, that scream might come from your own throat. You turn to the tent wall, cover your head with your hat, and try to sleep. But that night, you don't dream. You only see one question. If training is for survival, why does every hour bring you closer to death? Tomorrow, you won't have an answer, but you'll have a real chance to test it. You'll march with a loaded rifle, and this time, no one will hover to remind you how to hold the barrel right. But before you worry about the march, weapons, or enemies, your body raises a more urgent issue: hunger. Not the mild hunger after lunch, but the kind that makes your head spin, your stomach growl like a broken orchestra, and your eyes see logs as chicken thighs. That's when you're officially issued your first army ration. The quartermaster, a short, fat man smelling like forgotten cured meat, walks the line, handing each man an object harder than stone, hand length, called bread. You tap it on your helmet. It clinks. The guy next to you tries biting it. 2 seconds later, he's cursing and spitting out a tooth chip. Besides bread, you get a soup bowl, technically liquid, but that's generous. It has a greasy film floating like old lamp oil, a few unidentifiable greens, and a cube-shaped thing sunk below, maybe potato, maybe rock. The smell? Like foot wash water boiled a 3rd time. But you eat. You eat because you're hungry, exhausted, and if you don't, the guy next to you will. No one shares in the army. Here, survival is a game of who grabs fastest. Occasionally, if luck smiles, meaning no general visits, you might get a bit of wine. A reddish-brown liquid, sharp as gasoline mixed with pepper. It burns your throat like a wire brush, but at least it masks your own stench. An old soldier calls it medicine for those about to die but don't know they're dying yet. Some days, no soup. Reason? The cook has malaria, and the supply team forgot to light the fire. The platoon eats bread, dipped in rainwater. The youngest guy gnaws his, then bangs the rest on a rock to break it. The rock cracks. The bread stays whole. Someone mutters, "Bring this to battle. It'll crush enemy skulls." Everyone laughs, but it's a tearless laugh. Another time, you get dried meat, a slice thin as paper, Tough as shoe rubber, salty as mother's tears for enlisted sons. No one knows what meat. Rumors say horse, some say donkey. A crueler tongue says, probably something that once lived, whether it's still alive. Good luck. But you shove it in, chewing like a cow on dry grass. Not because it's good, but because your stomach's cramping like a fist in winter. The kitchen system is a joke. Each tent has a stove, really a hastily dug pit, fueled by anything that burns, rotten wood, dry leaves, or spare cloth. Once the cook's assistant used shroud fabric to heat soup. No one knew until someone found hair in their bowl. No one spoke. They ate. Hunger trumps disgust. At night, dessert is nothing. If you're lucky, someone in the squad might have hidden a dry onion or a handful of spilled beans from a supply cart. Those become gold. One guy trades a button for half a garlic clove. Another sells holy socks for a piece of cheese, hard as brick. You have bread, watery soup, and the one thing in abundance, hope. And though hope is the last thing left, it's fragile as an eggshell between two cannons. Because you know, this ration isn't to keep you healthy. It's just enough to keep you from dying instantly. No nutrition, no vitamins, no protein, just cheap calories. That's the strategy. Hungry soldiers are easier to control. Hungry soldiers don't resist. And hungry soldiers don't need pay. At night, you lie in the tent, stomach no longer registering full or empty. Just a dull groan like a windmill in your chest. Someone asks, "What's for tomorrow?" Another replies, "Pray, it's not me." Silence falls. Not because the joke's bad, because it might be true. You close your eyes, trying to recall home, your mother's soup, warm bread, the smell of wet grass outside. But memories are now faded black and white. Here, reality is a brick-hard loaf, a bowl saltier than seawater, and a simple wish to still have enough teeth tomorrow to keep eating. And you'll need those teeth, because tomorrow you'll taste something no military manual covers, how to relieve yourself like a Napoleonic soldier. No door, no paper, no privacy. And if you thought the rations were bad, just wait until you see their aftermath. The next morning, you wake to the sensation of your guts beating war drums. Your digestive system, already frail from days of stone-hard bread and foot-wash soup, has officially rebelled. You lurch up, hunched over, clutching your stomach, your mind spinning as if an entire battalion is marching through your intestines. You ask the guard for the latrine, and he smirks, points behind the tents, and says one word, pit. You drag yourself to the area, where the stench hits from 3 meters away, and then you see it, a pit as wide as 4 outstretched arms, half a man deep, surrounded by scattered footprints, boot marks, and something you don't want to identify. No walls, no curtains, no seat, just mud, feces, flies, and the eyes of dozens of other men squatting in every awkward position. Some smoke while handling business, others groan mid-act. One guy mutters a prayer. You freeze. The man beside you laughs. First time, pick the spot with the fewest flies. Bring a rock, no paper here. Before you can ask what the rock's for, he bends down, grabs a fist-sized stone, and vanishes behind a bush. A minute later, a groan escapes, and then you understand. You step to the pit's edge, trying not to look down, but the smell hits like a punch to the face. You hold your breath, squat, and instantly, the damp cold of the muddy ground makes you shudder. You've never missed your hometown outhouse more. Its brick walls, water bucket, creaky wooden door, but at least it had a door. Here, you and 300 others share one pit, taking turns. No order, no management. The process is hurry before someone else knocks you in. Some oversleep and soil their boots before reaching the pit. One trips on a rock, falls at the edge, and from then on, no one wants to stand near him in formation. A tall guy, constipated for 3 days, screams like a butchered cow when he finally frees himself. No one laughs. Everyone understands. Using the latrine in camp isn't just a bodily function. It's a mental trial, a battle for space, time, and long-dead privacy. Each squat means watching for swarming flies, and the guy behind you, because many lack the patience to wait and will force a retreat, whether you're done or not. And if it rains, dear God, if it rains, the pit turns into a swamp, water, and other things, mixing, spilling onto the ground, seeping into boot crevices. Slip then, and you lose dignity, hygiene, and the ability to hold your head up for the rest of training. You develop a new survival skill, timing your visit, not early morning, too crowded, not after meals, too risky. The sweet spot is during drill calls, when everyone's running, and you can sneak away for a precious few minutes to claim a good spot. But the problem is, you don't always control the timing. Sometimes, your stomach betrays you mid-firing drill, or during a march. Then, you must beg permission. If the officer says no, you get it. One guy in your squad pleaded to leave formation due to diarrhea, but the sergeant yelled, "Hold your rifle, clench your cheeks." The Emperor's soldiers don't weaken from the gut. Result, he fainted mid-march from dehydration. The whole squad did push-ups for poor discipline. The bigger issue, no water to wash. You might use your hand, leaves, torn cloth, or the most common option, pebbles. Some guys even smooth their rocks first, others just let fate decide. Under August's sun, you realize what it means to rot day by day. No soap, no towels, clothes washed once every 2 weeks in pond water, by hand. At night, the tense air is thick with sweat, feces, wet boots, and mold. You turn to the guy on your left. He's scratching his hip, non-stop. The one on your right groans. "I think I've got sores." You sniff, not out of disdain, but to avoid breathing through your mouth. You start remembering home, where you griped about the leaky leaf-roofed outhouse, or the dog chasing you across the yard. Now, you'd give anything for a door, a seat, and 1 minute without 30 pairs of eyes watching. The worst part? You haven't even fought yet. This is just logistics, camp life, the prep phase. Yet you've already lost self-respect, dignity, and basic hygiene. Tomorrow, you'll be taken further, out of camp, on your first march. And if you thought this was filthy, sorry, Napoleon's soldier life is about to stink in a whole new way. The smell of mud, sweat, broken backs, and every step pounding stones like fate knocking on a coffin. But before that journey, you must rest. The word rest here deserves quotes, bold, underline, and a health warning, because your first night sleeping outdoors is nothing like the romantic paintings of campfires, wine, or songs. That night, you sleep in mud. No, more accurately, you're drowned in mud like a yam trampled by a herd of cows. After leaving camp for about 12 hours, the platoon halts in an empty field, once a wheat field before cannons crushed it. The ground is slick, grass mashed, water pooling in puddles. "Set up camp," the sergeant says, as casually as if you're laying out a picnic. But no blankets, no tents. You're handed a torn oilcloth, thin as old newspaper, and told, "Figure out your bed, survive till morning." Good. You pick a less soggy spot, push rocks aside, spread the cloth, lie down, and instantly feel soaked. Waterproof, maybe, but water got in somehow. To your left, a soldier folds his cloak as a pillow. To your right, another has collapsed, mouth open, snoring like he's summoning a ship from the next century. You close your eyes, then hear a rustle. You open them. A small, furry shape scurries across your chest. A rat, big as a kitten. You leap up, yell. The guy beside you chuckles dryly. Don't chase it. Let it pass. It bites less. Moments later, a scream. Someone's ear is bitten, blood trickling. No one helps. Everyone burrows deeper into their cloaks, trying to melt into the earth. You try to sleep, but every time you doze, something wakes you. Footsteps in wet soil, rat squeaks, labored breathing. One guy seems asthmatic. Another coughs for an hour. Then, the snoring, not normal snoring. A roar from hell. A huge guy, maybe once a blacksmith, lies on his back, mouth wide like a cannon pit, snoring like a crazed elephant. You count each breath lasts 6 seconds, ending in a gurgle like he's swallowing his own soul. Someone crawls up, stuffs rags in their ears. No earplugs, no solutions, just endurance. Another taps the snorer's shoulder. He rolls over and snores louder, this time with rhythm. A guy mutters, "Must be death signal for tomorrow's casualties." You laugh wearily, not from joy, but because if you don't laugh, you'll go mad. Then rain starts. Small drops patter on your coat, your face. Mud rises cold from beneath. The oilcloth is now just wet paper, pinning you to the ground. Someone groans from the cold. Another wraps tighter in their cloak like a cocoon, but it's useless. Water seeps into every thread, every crevice, every hair. You curl up, clutching your rifle, praying silently, Don't die of cold before seeing the front. Then you notice something worse. You can't feel your toes. They're numb, frozen, like they've detached from your body. You rub, slap, no use. You look around.
Others are doing the same.
Some remove boots, revealing feet, white as dough, purple around the nails. Campaign foot, someone says. Get it, and you lose toes. You pull your boots back on, pretending you didn't hear. You don't sleep, just close your eyes. Your mind fills with sloshing rain, heavy breaths, someone's nightmare-fueled scream, and deep within, the sound of you, not from your mouth, from your heart, a faint noise like a crushed insect. I want to go home. The next morning before sunrise, a whistle shrieks. The field stirs. Men sit up, some vomit, some wring water from shirts, some search for boots stolen by rats. You stand, heavy as stone, back aching, feet stiff, hair caked in mud. Amid it all, the sergeant's voice booms. Last night was just a warm-up. Today, we march, 30 miles. Fall behind, you're left. Complain, you're kicked. Die, buried after battle. You tighten your bootlaces, grab your rifle, turn from the soggy, steaming, feces-scented sleeping spot. You know, last night was just the appetizer. Today, hell's real feast is served in mud, sweat, and steps trampling the dried blood of those who marched before. The march begins like a nightmare, with no end. 30 miles of dirt, nearly 50 kilometers, through fields, forests, muddy trails, where each step is a battle against mud, rocks, and your own crumbling body. You don't march for ideals or victory, but because if you stop, the man behind will trample you, and then you'll be left behind, forever. You don't know when your feet start bleeding, maybe after the 10th mile, or when you slip into a ditch and smash your knee on a root. At first, it's a slight sting, then a deep ache, then swelling, then burning, and finally, you feel nothing. Pain becomes the soundtrack of existence. You just lower your head, clench your teeth, and step, until you can't. An officer passes, glances at your foot, where the torn boot sucks blood like a leech's mouth, and says coldly, take him to the medical tent. If he's usable, back tomorrow. You're not sure if you're relieved or terrified, because Napoleon's medical tent isn't for healing, it's for deciding, keep part of a man, or discard the whole. You're carried to a grey tent, or rather a makeshift morgue draped in rough cloth. The smell of fresh blood, pus, gunpowder, feces and liquor hits you, nearly making you vomit on entry. On 3 wooden tables, old ammo crates, draped with blankets, lie 3 patients, 1 missing an arm, 1 missing a leg. The last screams as the doctor pulls out a rusty saw. You swallow hard. The doctor, if you can call him that, is a gaunt man, hands caked in dried blood, wearing an apron with no white left. A sweat-soaked rag wraps his head, and his mouth chews something, maybe mint, maybe disdain for every life entering here. He glances at you. Feel pain. You nod. He lifts an iron clamp big as a horseshoe tool. Still feeling means there's hope. Boots off. You remove them. The cloth wrap comes off too, sticky with blood and pus. Your skin is blistered, cracked, toes black. An orderly nearby gags. The doctor sighs. 3 toes can be saved. The other 2 might as well. Before you ask what might as well means, he turns to the nurse. Saw. The nurse hands him the same saw used on the last patient. No wash, no wipe, no sterilization. He looks at you again. Want a drink? You nod. He shoves a bottle in your mouth. Burning, rancid, dizzying. Then he ties a rope around your ankle, grabs the saw, and starts. You scream, not from pain. You're past that threshold. You scream, from the sound of the saw. The screeching grind as metal cuts through bone. The crunch of living tissue. Your own gasping moans as you realize you're not dead, but you're being carved apart. 3 minutes later, your foot's remnants are tossed into a bucket, already holding hands, shins, and part of a skull. No stitches, just a rag dipped in liquor wrapped around the wound. You're pushed out, lying with 3 other repaired men. A guy younger than you trembles uncontrollably. I just had a scratched shoulder. Now I can't lift my arm, he whispers. Another, eyes blank, stares at the sky, lost an ear. But it's fine, I can still hear cannon fire. You lie there, pain so intense, you don't know if you're awake or dreaming. Each breath is a battle, each movement, a negotiation between mind and body. And then you see, not a light at the tunnel's end, but a reality black as the bottom of a medical pot. You're alive, but only in flesh. Hours later, the nurse returns, flips you up. Enough, no beds, out. You crawl outside, lie in the mud, light rain falling. Your cloak is now a shroud. You collapse, unsure if you'll walk tomorrow. But you know, no one will check your wound. No one will ask if it hurts. If it infects, you'll die quietly. If you survive, you're recovered. No rehab, no medicine, no hope. The next morning, the sergeant calls roll. If you're alive, stand. You try. He glances at your bandaged foot. Got a foot, you can march. You want to argue but realize, if you don't go, you're left behind. And that means slow death. You choose pain. Choose to drag your broken foot. Choose to live on. And so you join the ranks. A walking corpse. Each step is a knife. But you don't cry. Don't complain. Because around you, hundreds of other walking corpses, limp on tooless feet, bandaged arms, unhealed scars, and ahead, the march, the drums, the battlefield waiting, where real bullets don't care who's lost a piece and who was never whole. The drums sound before dawn. The sky is still ash grey, fog lingering, the ground freezing. You're not woken by words, but by a light kick to the ribs and a casual venomous line. Up 40 clicks today. Not miles, kilometers. 40 kilometers. About 10 hours of non-stop walking, carrying a pack, rifle, cloak, leftover wine, and a spirit torn like a kitchen rag. You don't know what will break you first. Your still aching foot from the unhealed saw cut, your stomach lined only with yesterday's stale bread, or the relentless steps of hundreds behind you, daring you not to stop. Because if you do, the man behind will trample you. If you scream, an officer will club you with a rifle butt. If you faint, you're left roadside, forgotten. The march doesn't wait. It crushes, silently, relentlessly. Each step is a test. Your feet, already bleeding from stiff boots, blister. At first, it's a pricking like thorns, then burning. Then, it feels like two raw eggs are wedged between your soles and boots, and each step cracks them. Blisters burst. Blood soaks your socks, then hardens. Each lift tears flesh from skin. You hold it in. No groans, no complaints. You heard a guy behind whimper from knee pain, only to be yanked from line, slapped like thunder, and told, can't walk. Stay and fertilize the crows. No one saw him again. Maybe he's alive, maybe not, but you learned, pain must stay silent. At noon, the march pauses for 10 minutes, not to rest, but to reform ranks. You seize the moment to remove a boot. The stench makes you reel. Your soul is a small battlefield. Blisters, tears, pus. A guy nearby sees, exhales. Nice. Mine had maggots yesterday. You don't ask if he's joking. In Napoleon's army, the line between humor and hell is thin. The afternoon sun turns brutal. Dirt roads become fine dust, clinging to sweat. Your lips crack. Your tongue sticks to your palate. You're thirsty, but there's no water. Or rather, there is. But you licked the flask dry by morning. Some drink rainwater caught in cloaks. One fool scoops from a stagnant pond, and 3 hours later, vomits violently. The sergeant just says, his fault for being stupid, then orders the march to continue. By late afternoon, you no longer feel your steps. Your body isn't yours. It's a creaking machine, lurching on inertia and the basest survival instinct, not to die alone. At times, you think you've collapsed, but then you catch the eyes of the man beside you, glazed, sunken, filthy, and realize he's clinging to you as you cling to him. No one wants to be the first to fall. Finally, you reach camp. No cheers. No one collapses from exhaustion. They've no strength left to collapse. They just stand, like breathing logs. The sergeant steps up, declares, if you're alive, set camp. If not, well. And so, everyone quietly gathers cloth, finds dry ground, lights fires with wet twigs, tries to chew rock-hard rations. You look at your feet, remove a boot, see blood glue the cloth. You don't cry, don't groan. You just sit, watching the sun set, as tired as you. At night, you lie on the ground, feet propped on your pack, body curled in a sweat-soaked cloak, back aching like it's been hammered. You sleep without knowing if it's sleep or temporary death. Because tomorrow you march again. No one asks if you're okay. No one cares if you can walk. Because tomorrow you face the night before your first battle. And if you thought marching was hell, wait until you fight while hungry, cold, and numb beneath your feet. No one says it, but everyone knows. Tomorrow someone will die, and it could be you. The night before your first battle unfolds without fanfare. No grand speeches, no music, or rousing words from generals. Just a curt order: set camp, stay silent, no fires. So you, in moldy clothes, torn boots, head spinning from hunger and sleeplessness, are told to sit still in the dark, waiting for your turn to charge into a slaughter you don't even fully understand. Cold seeps through every seam of your coat. You curl up in the torn oilcloth you've slept on for nights, now stiff with mud and sweat. Your stomach churns violently, not from hunger, but from the dried meat you ate this afternoon, which wasn't fresh by any definition. It's brewing a storm in your gut, and you know what's coming. Diarrhea. Yes, the night before battle, you're not just facing death, but fighting to keep yourself from smelling like the battlefield itself. You crawl behind a bush, the designated field latrine, really just a low patch of ground, used too many times. You try not to slip, fall, or leave your dignity on your pants. Every sound is a negotiation between survival and shame. When you return, the guy beside you scoots away slightly, saying nothing. The smell speaks for itself. No one sleeps, or if they do, it's with eyes open and hands gripping rifle butts. You hear whispers: "If I die, tell my mom I didn't cry." Who even knows your mom? Doesn't matter. Just say it. Fragmented conversations drift into the darkness, like scraps of cloaks carried by the wind. In the distance, enemy drums, faint, heavy, like a heartbeat against life itself. Someone whispers, "They're about 3 miles away." Another tonight, we might be lying near the guy who'll stab us dead by morning. The words make you shudder, not because they're wrong, but because they're too right. In the thick fog, you see vague shapes, cavalry leading horses, artillery moving cannons. No one dares make a sound, because the enemy might be watching too. You're drenched in cold sweat. Your hands shake, not from the wind, but from fear rising in your throat. You thought you were tough, but now, realizing tomorrow's sunrise might be your last, every layer of bravado cracks. You touch the dull sword at your hip, issued with the instruction: use it when you're out of bullets or cornered. If you have nothing, use your teeth. A young soldier beside you mumbles a prayer, eyes squeezed shut, fingers tracing a small cord around his neck, probably cloth torn from his mother's dress. You have nothing to cling to. No photo, no keepsake, no faith, just survival instinct, the force that's carried you through days of marching, mud, and now to the edge of death. The sergeant moves down the line, whispering to each group: sleep if you can. Tomorrow fire on command. No shooting early. Desert the line. You're shot. The order is short, sharp, cold as a bullet through the chest. You don't know if you can do it. Not the shooting, but keeping your hands steady, aiming right, not hitting a comrade, not pissing yourself when the enemy starts howling. You lie down, head on a rock-hard pack, eyes half closed, every sense is on edge. Night insects, wind through grass, rustling boots, all amplified. You start seeing hallucinations, a waving hand, a familiar face, a bowl of hot soup, then a single gunshot cracks in the distance. You bolt upright, everyone does, but no more follow. The sergeant hisses, rat, or some idiot misfired. Sleep. You can't sleep again. Every closed eye brings a nightmare. You're torn apart by bayonets, trampled by war horses, or left behind with a ripped gut and staring eyes. You open them. Dawn creeps in. Fog lifts. The first sound is the command whistle. The second, loading rifles. And then you know, waiting is over. Now it's your turn to run, shoot, kill, or be killed. You stand, head pounding like a hammer, feet numb as rotten wood, rifle in hand, eyes forward. No one speaks. Everyone silently moves to the open field where the formation will deploy. As the sun rises, casting its first light on ranks taut as bowstrings, you think, if last night was a fever, Today is the scalpel, and it's waiting for you to step onto the operating table. No anesthesia, no painkillers, no escape. Then it begins, not with a shout or drums, but a deep boom like the world splitting in two. You flinch, ears ringing, vision blurring. A second later, the ground shakes like an earthquake. Before a scream escapes, a man in the front row collapses, head no longer whole. You freeze. Then the second salvo hits. No doubt now you've just stepped into the hell of war, where the first thing taken isn't your life, but your hearing. Artillery isn't like any sound you've heard. It doesn't echo, it swallows. Each blast is a punch to your chest, throwing your heart off rhythm, squeezing your lungs, ringing your ears like someone's clamping your nerves with iron pliers. You can't hear the man beside you, can't tell gunshots from screams. Only one thing remains, relentless, pounding explosions, like the skies dropping bricks on your head. A shell lands 20 paces away, dirt, wood, flesh, and blood spray in a filthy rain. A hot metal shard grazes your cheek, slicing skin, leaving a thin red line, like a whip's mark. The guy next to you drops without a sound, half his body gone. You look at your boots, covered in fresh blood. Whose? You don't know. Napoleon's artillery, hailed as the king of the battlefield, and you believe it because it's killed you 10 times in your mind before you even see the enemy. The 12-pounder cannons, hauled up since dawn, line up, mouths gaping like starving whales. Each shot pushes back an entire squad, fuses lit by hand, wicks sparked by flame. Each round ball flies like a curse, able to pierce 3 men side by side before stopping. You don't know what to fear first, enemy bullets or your own side's shells misaimed. Some say in every battle, at least 5 men die from friendly fire, not foes. You believe it. Minutes ago, a shell landed between 2 French units. No one dares ask who fired. No one dares blame. Everyone just ducks and moves on. If they still have heads, you're ordered to advance, while shells still burst. Advance? It's crouching through mud, steadying yourself while wiping blood from your ears, silently counting down your odds of survival. At the next position, you see a cannon hit by a shell, its crew blown apart. Only one man remains, legless, still trying to lift a final round from the crate. You move to help, but the sergeant yanks you. Leave him. He's done. Move. When the artillery pauses, you know it's just redirecting or reloading. No one cheers when it stops, because you know when it resumes, your spot might be the target. And it will hit without reason, without mercy. You thought war was gunfire. Now you know, war is artillery. A sound that doesn't just kill bodies, but souls, silences resistance, makes you forget your own name. By noon, the artillery switches to canister shot. No more round balls, but bundles of metal that burst into hundreds of dagger-like shards. One grazes you, embeds in the ground, explodes. You're thrown back. Opening your eyes, you see a hand, no, half a hand, twitching centimeters from your face. You roll over, fighting not to vomit, but the smell of smoke, burnt flesh, and hot blood makes you retch up soup from 3 days ago. A soldier beside you drops to his knees, hands over ears, head shaking. I'm deaf. I can't hear anything. He repeats, voice faint as a breeze. You barely hear, but see his lips move. A medic runs up, tries to drag him. He breaks free, charges forward, screaming, and is torn apart by a shell 2 seconds later. The medic turns away. You turn away, not from fear, because you're used to it, to loss, to sudden death, to the man beside you, vanishing in a heartbeat. By afternoon, the shelling slows, not because they're out of ammo, but because infantry is advancing. Artillery won't fire when your own men are close, meaning you're about to replace the bullets. You're about to charge into the mud where shells just turned men into minced bone and flesh. You stand trembling, ears still ringing, eyes still blurred. You don't hear the order clearly, but see everyone surge forward. You follow, each step a gamble. Ahead is smoke, fire, blood, and an unseen enemy. Behind are the panting cannons, like beasts fed a meal of human blood. And you know if you survive, you might carry a scar on your ear for life, or never hear anyone again. But if not, this morning's artillery is the last sound you'll ever hear. It will echo forever in the void, in place of applause, sending you to death. Because right after, you're ordered to charge. No more shells covering you. No time to think. No barrier between you and the enemy. Just you, a rifle out of ammo, and a sharp bayonet fixed to its end, and ahead, strange faces, weapons raised, eyes as panicked as yours. No one's a personal enemy. But in this moment, if you don't die, they must. That's the new definition of justice on Napoleon's battlefield. You run, not knowing if it's by order or instinct. Each step jolts your heart. Ears still ring, head still spins, but your eyes see clearly the dark shapes closing in. Men in different colored uniforms, just as dirty, muddy, trembling as you. Then the first clash. No gunshots, just metal hissing through air, screams, blood spraying. You face a young man, his eyes wide.
Terrified.
You raise your rifle. He raises his sword. You don't think, you thrust. The first sensation is resistance. Your bayonet pierces his stomach, and for a moment you think you're not strong enough. But it goes through. He exhales like a deflated sack. His eyes still meet yours. His mouth moves. Maybe mother, maybe no, maybe a name. Then he collapses. Pulling your rifle down, you step back, heart pounding, hands shaking. No time to pause. Another man charges, and you don't have time to free your bayonet. You dodge. He swings wide. You fall. He lunges. You block. Your nails dig into his eyes. He screams, drops his weapon. You grab a stray sword, slash blindly at his neck. Blood sprays your face. Warm, salty, alive. You've killed a second man. You no longer see them as men, just bodies that could kill you. As your bayonet thrusts, your hands pray. Not for them, but for you. Don't let him strike back. The battlefield is chaotic blows. Soldiers from both sides collide like beasts. No formation, no tactics, just groans, roars, and death throes. A man stabbed through the cheek, still tries to grab his enemy's arm. Another, guts spilling, crawls to stab again. No one stops. No one has time for pity. You're kicked in the chest. Fall. A man swings his rifle down. You roll, grab a rock, smash his head. He staggers. You stab. Don't count how many times. Until he's still. Your hands are sticky with blood. You don't know whose. Soon you lose your platoon. You're lost in a mob of running men. Some shout retreat. Others yell advance. You hear nothing. Your eyes only see bodies. Lying, sitting, kneeling, curled, eyes staring, some headless, some clutching missing legs. You hide behind a wrecked cannon, huddled, gasping, heart ready to burst. Another soldier crawls up. His coat's torn, eyes swollen, hand on his gut. He whispers, "I don't want to die." You look at him. You feel the same, but no one gets to choose. In the distance, a bugle sounds. You don't know whose, but it pulls you up. You run, not sure where, just know you're breathing, holding a rifle, blood still warm, and still praying. You plunge back into the fray. Once more, your bayonet pierces cloth, skin, flesh, blood. You stop counting. By now you feel nothing. When you stab, only one thought remains. Stab first, pray later. As the sun sets, you don't know if the battle continues or has ended. All that's left are limping shadows, dried blood in patches, scattered weapons, and the wheezing breaths of survivors. You slump to the ground, still gripping your rifle, bayonet broken, throat parched. Bodies surround you, some living, groaning. No one saves anyone. Those who can live, do. Those who can't, vanish by night. You glance at your hands, trembling, caked in black blood, hair, flesh. You turn and vomit. Nothing comes up, just dry heaves. Then you cry, not from guilt, not from pain, but because finally, you're still breathing. And in this world, surviving a melee is the only thing called victory. Tomorrow, you'll collect your comrades' bodies, bury them, clear the field. No one will ask, "Are you okay today?" They'll only ask, "Can you stab again?" Because war under Napoleon has no room for those who shudder, only for those strong enough to hold a bayonet and keep praying after each thrust. And then, like cruel fate, you're no longer strong enough, because a stab from behind, the side, or some dying man's flailing, has torn a long gash across your back. At first you don't notice. In the chaos, adrenaline numbs everything. But as things settle, as you sit among the bodies, as you realize your hands can't lift your rifle anymore, pain hits like a scream from your guts. Your back is hot, wet, then cold fast. You reach back, blood. You're wounded. It seems better than death, but you're wrong. In Napoleon's army, being wounded starts a chain of humiliation, pain, and oblivion. The dead are buried, maybe even named, if lucky. The wounded, their burdens, damaged goods tossed from the war machine. No one wants to touch you. No one wants to carry you. They pass you like a broken branch on the road, dangerous if it trips them, but not worth clearing. You try to stand, can't. Legs shake, hands slip. An officer passes, glances at you for a second, then turns away. The only living medic rushes to a convulsing man nearby, leaving you with the wind's howl and the buzz of flies swarming your wound. When someone finally drags you to a tent, you think you'll be cared for, but care is a luxury. You're thrown onto a torn cloth on damp ground, where 3 others already lie groaning, one dead but not yet removed. You strain to lift your head. The tent's ceiling is low, grey, the smell of feces and burnt flesh a punch from hell. The doctor, if he's still a doctor, glances at you for a second. "Still kicking," he says, then lifts a small knife, slicing your coat like peeling an orange. No anesthesia, no cleaning, no questions. Where the knife goes, you clench your teeth. At times, you think you've fainted. But pain keeps you awake. He pours liquor on the wound. You scream. He doesn't react. "Scream louder, easier to know you're alive," he says. After first aid, you're bandaged, with cloth torn from a dead soldier's coat. The color remains. The smell remains. You grit your teeth. Not from pain, you've passed that, but because you know this wound won't heal here. If it infects, you'll die slowly. Fever, delirium, rotting flesh, like hundreds sprawled around the camp. For days you lie still. No visitors, no talk. You become part of the battlefield's inventory. New soldiers don't ask who you are. Old ones are dead. The doctor passes, picking heavy cases for amputation, light ones to ignore. You're in between. Too bad to be useful, too mild to be worth saving. Sometimes you think, if only I'd died in battle. Quick, clean, no waiting as flies land on raw flesh. No hearing the cries of the dying next door. But you live, not from will, but because your body clings like a fool who won't let go. You lie, staring at the tent ceiling, counting 1, 2, 3. How many days? No one says. No one remembers. By day 5, you can't stand. Legs weak, back swollen, eyes blurry. Then one morning, a soldier passes, points at you. This guy survived? Can he carry ammo? You become a laborer, hauling ammo, cleaning rifles, dragging water, clearing bodies, wiping blood. No one asks if you were a frontline soldier. No one cares how many enemies you stabbed. Now, you're just the wounded not dead yet. A temporary label, before disease finishes what's left of you. And the bitterest truth. Death is sometimes kinder than survival. Because, in Napoleon's battles, death ends pain. Survival just prolongs decay. Slow, silent, unseen, unrecorded, unneeded. And you, with a gash on your back, clouded eyes, and numb feet, become living proof of a cruel fact. Surviving doesn't mean being spared. It's just a chance to die again. Slower this time. But then the battlefield shifts. A sudden counterattack. The French lines can't hold. Your platoon scatters, half dead, half fleeing. You, unable to run, stand, draw your sword, or raise your hands in surrender, can only lie there, and the Russians find you. No interrogation, no beating, no one shouting enemy. Like in books, just 2 bear-like Russian soldiers storming in. One taps your head with a rifle butt, not hard, but enough to make stars dance. The other flips you over, checks for weapons, bandages, and strips anything usable, boots, dagger, even your blood-soaked cloak. Then they haul you up like a sack. You're no longer a person, you're a trophy. They drag you to a field camp in a pine forest. No tents, no beds, just wooden posts tied with rope, where dozens of French prisoners huddle in thin snow, tattered, bruised, eyes vacant, like animals stripped of instincts. You're tossed among them. No welcome, no help. One glances at you, mutters, still fresh, ears intact, then turns away. Russian guards set up large iron pots in the yard. Light fires. You smell meat. Strange. Not beef, not horse, nothing you've eaten before. Then you see them bring cages, filled with rats. They dump the rats into boiling water, add leaves, rotten potatoes, moldy breadcrumbs, just like that. No skinning, no gutting, whole. A Frenchman beside you whispers, rat stew. First time's hard to swallow. Third time, you get used to it. Fifth time, you'll fight for it. You think he's joking, until you're handed your first portion, a blackened tin bowl with a tail floating, a strand of fur, and a smell like a corpse soaked in 3-day-old urine. You vomit, naturally, but by night, hunger drives you to beg for another scraps. He names a price. Your socks, moldy, hole-ridden, fouler than the stew, but you hand them over, and you eat. First bite, eyes closed. Second, nose pinched. Third, you don't care anymore. Day after day, you learn to survive in the prisoner camp. No one bathes, no one washes, no one combs their hair. Fingernails grow like claws, teeth loosen, some get sores, some die overnight from cold. The Russians don't shoot, they don't need to. They let prisoners die on their own. They know if cold and hunger don't kill you, despair will finish the job. One day, you see a man bite another prisoner's ear, not from madness. He thought it was bread, blood flows, screams. The Russian guards just laugh and jot something in a notebook. You're assigned to clear snow by hand. No shovel, just a piece of wood. You scrape cement-like snow to clear paths for Russian patrols. Each scrape reopens the wound on your back. Each pause earns a kick to keep going. Your eyes blur, your feet feel detached, but you scrape, because stopping means the quiet zone. Everyone knows that's a temporary grave. A prisoner, once a doctor, whispers, if you fever for 3 days, teeth fall, nails peel, that's scurvy, slow death, no pain at first. But in the end, your skin splits like onion layers. You look at your hands, pale, dry, cracked. You don't know what stage you're at. You don't know who you are anymore. Just this tomorrow, you still wake, still eat rat stew, still clear snow, still pretend you exist. And worse than death is the day you sit by the stew pot, pick out a whole rat, skin it, debone it, and chew it methodically. No pinching your nose, no disgust. You just eat, like it's the most natural thing. Then you realize you're no longer a French soldier, not a prisoner, not a person. You're a biological machine, kept alive by instinct and denial. And this freezing camp, where rat stew is the main course, violence is the morning greeting, and cries become lullabies, is a graveyard without tombstones for souls not yet dead. But then, in a dim moonlit night, when hunger no longer keeps you still, when a bunkmate bites your ear in your sleep, and you see the line between man and beast has vanished, you decide, escape, or be eaten, piece by piece. There's no plan, because in this place, chaos decides everything. A blizzard hits at midnight. Guards huddle in tents, too sluggish to notice. A fence corner collapses under a fallen tree. You don't think, you crawl, on elbows, knees, anything that moves. Your eyes sting, lungs burn from icy wind, but your heart beats, for the first time in months, not from fear, but hope, a luxury. 3 days later, you're still alive. You don't know how far you've gone, just that you no longer see pines, no Russian shadows, no sound of boiling stew. You eat moss, lick ice, drink from muddy puddles, your back wound tears open, swollen, oozing, but you keep going. Not from courage, because going back means befriending rats until they eat what's left of you. And then, miraculously, you see a wooden outpost. A French flag flutters above. You don't believe your eyes. You kneel, cry, face to the sky, hands waving, feet dragging toward the post. You shout, voice hoarse, I'm French, escaped prisoner, movement, figures, a rifle barrel pokes from sandbags, then a shout, stop, don't come closer, you're overjoyed. French, it's French, your comrades, your people. You raise both hands, stumble a step. I'm from the 31st platoon, captured at Smolensk. I've got my tags. But then, bang, a shot rings out. Your chest burns. You fall. Blood spurts from under your collar. You don't understand. Your eyes blur as soldiers run up, boots crunching mud and snow. One yells, damn it, he spoke French. Another sighs, thought he was a Russian spy, pretending. A third shrugs. Want to report to the captain? Nah, he's probably dead. You don't die instantly. You're still conscious. Minutes later, you're flipped over. An officer looms above, eyes probing, emotionless. He's one of ours. Look at the uniform. Tags. Old wound too. He sighs, mutters. Sometimes, our own are the hardest to tell apart. You're carried to a medical tent. Blood still flows. The bullet hit your lung. Deep, not through the heart. But no one's sure you'll live. A young doctor, hands trembling, tries to stitch the wound. He says nothing to you. Just shakes his head, sews, washes, wraps. Each needle prick flashes light before your eyes. Not heaven, memories. You see the muddy field, the shared latrine pit, the headless body at your feet. Your bayonet piercing a Russian's gut for the first time. The bubbling rat stew, the mad soldier biting your ear. And then the eyes of the Frenchman who shot you, realizing his mistake but not caring enough to apologize. You survive. Again, some twisted miracle keeps you here. The bullet leaves your left side immobile. You lie on a makeshift cot in the medical tent. No visitors, no words. Nurses change your bandages like they're fixing a broken chair. You're no longer a soldier, let alone a hero. You're a relic, a mistake, a consequence of a wrong call in a moment of doubt. You hear an officer whisper to another, "No one needs to know about this, just a wounded wanderer. No papers, no name, no one to vouch. Better to shoot a mistake than let a spy live." You want to scream, say you survived hell, ate rats, left friends behind, wept at the sight of the French flag, but your lips won't move. Pain keeps you silent as a shadow, and you realize you escaped the camp, but now you're trapped in your own body, and the one who shot you wasn't the enemy. It was a comrade, someone you thought would welcome you back as a warrior. But war has no return, only walking corpses, staggering through their own wounds, to be gunned down by bullets labeled friendly. And as you lie silent in the medical tent, no visitors, no one saying your name, no one believing you were ever on the battlefield, hundreds of kilometers away, someone still waits, not knowing if you're alive or dead, not knowing you crawled through snow, ate rat stew, or were shot by your own side, not knowing if you're still her husband, or just a name fading in the village's memory. Soldiers' wives in Napoleon's time had no privileges, no monthly aid, no ceremonies to honor their pain, no memoirs to tell of a woman's wait for her man at war. They had one thing, waiting for letters or death, notices, and the truth is, most got neither. Each day, she rises before dawn, lights the fire, boils water, hauls wood, cleans the chicken coop, everything as before, except for one absence. The gruff morning words, footsteps by the kitchen, the coat draped on a chair, all now just ghosts in a cold house. The village stays the same, old folks weaving nets, kids playing in the yard, but women like her, soldiers' wives, drift through days like spirits not yet buried. Some days, a villager gets a letter, a crumpled sheet, army seal, a few lines. Your husband died heroically near Smolensk. Our condolences. No date, no details, no ashes returned. Just paper and a pitying glance from the courier. She gets nothing, no letter, no news, nothing. Just nights, when wind howls through the thatched roof, making her jump, thinking it's his footsteps. Every distant hoofbeat draws her to the door. At first, it's hope, then habit, then torture. Because when you wait too long, every sound becomes fate's cruel trick. Once, she nearly collapsed, seeing a grey cloak, exactly like yours when you left. But he turned. Not you, not anyone. She was a wife. Now, she doesn't know what she is. Widow? Not quite. No confirmation. Single? Not allowed. The village knows she's married. Half a person? Maybe. Half alive, with half a heart sent away. No one knowing if it'll return. She writes letters. Many. Sent through churches, horse posts, friends of friends. No replies. Some get lost. Some left in snow. Some used by couriers to kindle fires in Russia's cold. And she keeps writing, because stopping means accepting. And she can't accept that you're dead, or worse, alive and forgetting the way home. On long nights, she mends your shirt sleeve, not for you to wear, but for her hands to have something to hold. She talks to you, like you're still there. By the fire, wet wood again. At dinner, just black bread today. At bedtime, you're snoring again. You know, sometimes, she dreams you're real. In the dream you stand at the door, tattered, eyes lost, but smiling. I'm back. She wakes, tears soaking, and silently folds the empty blanket beside her. The village whispers she's mad, talking to air, keeping your blood-stained shirt in a chest, sometimes smelling it, but no one mocks, because they know, tomorrow it's their turn. One day their husbands will leave, and they'll become the ones waiting at the door for hoofbeats. In another world, you still breathe, but she doesn't know, and you don't know that. Amid countless pains, someone remembers every scar on your hand, knows your left eye squints slightly when you smile, remembers you hated beans, recalls you slept on your left side. Small, useless details to the world, but everything to someone who loved. You survive, but drift through the army system, like damaged goods. No one claims. She survives, but her soul empties daily, like a bottomless dry well. Between you are hundreds of miles, thousands of corpses, and an empire that doesn't care. Tomorrow, she'll stand at the door again, basket of wood in hand, eyes on the horizon. Maybe nothing, maybe hoofbeats. But this time, if a courier stops with a small paper, she'll know something has ended. Not the war, but faith. Faith that loving a soldier means something remains after the war. And you motionless in the medical tent, unable to speak, unable to lift a hand, will never know that. In a distant village, someone whispers to the wind each night, "If you're alive, dream of me, just once." But while you teeter between life and death, while your wife at home knits, waits for letters, and buries hope, hundreds of kilometers away, in the heart of France, Paris people feast, not to celebrate victory, but to celebrate themselves. That city, under Napoleon, looks like a glamorous lady, with garish lipstick, silken gowns, walking in mud-stained shoes, and no one dares ask what she truly thinks. Paris in the early 19th century is an illusion woven from propaganda, parades, and patriotic songs. People pass the half-built Arc de Triomphe, waving flags, chanting the emperor's name like he's a savior. New nobles, once nobodies, risen through flattery and war profiteering, wear gold-embroidered coats, pinned medals, recounting glorious battles they never set foot in. In candlelit, crystal-filled salons, they talk of France's glory like it's fine chicken soup, sipped when life feels bland. But beneath the polish lies rot. Ordinary Parisians eat moldy bread, meat prices soar, coal is scarce, homes are overcrowded, men go to war, women to factories, children roam streets, stealing, working from age 6. But the papers don't report that. They print only victories, fake, bloody, or with no survivors to tell the tale. Criticism is silenced. Publishing licenses are censored. News follows templates from the Elysee. Victory, victory, glory, victory. You might die on the front, but they'll turn your death into a noble sacrifice for the homeland. Your mother gets a form letter, red seal, pre-printed. Your son fell for France, in faith and honor. Your wife, silence. And Paris? Paris keeps dancing. On Saint Honore Avenue, balls are held for returning officers, if they still have legs to dance. Those who can't sit in corners, props, drinking wine, talking of braver comrades who died for ideals. In theaters, tragedies about soldiers dying for love draw tears, like streams, while outside, beggar veterans extend hands for a coin. The church, bought back by Napoleon with restored privileges, preaches war as God's will, bloodshed as a test of faith. Parishioners should rejoice in offering their bodies to France's holy kingdom. Lost an arm, pray with the other. Lost both, use your heart. Lost your heart, good, you're ready for heaven. Even those who know the truth, stay silent, because under Napoleon, dissent is suicide. People recall the revolution, the guillotine, and think, at least now we have order. Order for truth, order for voices, order for black market food, business permits, and the right not to be shot for staring at an officer too long. And while you clench your teeth in a filthy camp, watching flies swarm your wound, in an apartment near Pont-Neuf, a new noblewoman tries on 3 dresses to pick the best for a ball celebrating Austerlitz, where her husband never went, but still got a medal for outstanding logistical contributions. And Napoleon, he's in the Tuileries, among Roman statues and oil paintings, exalting the empire's immortality. Daily, he signs dozens of decrees, appoints hundreds of posts, receives thousands of praises from every kind of sycophant. He knows everything's rotting, but smiles, plays the savior emperor, because he understands one thing: an empire needs only an illusion. and he's its master weaver. In schools, children learn of victories. No one teaches them about the wounded, the prisoners, the deserters. No one tells of fathers who don't return, mothers driven mad, or children starving on the road to Paris begging for news from the war ministries. And if one day you return to Paris, limping on a wooden leg, hunched, a long scar on your neck, barely able to speak, they'll see you as a relic, a living reminder of a time they're trying to forget. They'll avoid your eyes, pivot to the weather, and hurry away, because to them, you're proof that victory isn't free. You who fought, bled, survived, become a ghost wandering lamplit streets, where cafes laugh and children dance under the Arc de Triomphe. And you'll ask, the glory I bled for, is there any place in it for me? The answer comes on a foggy morning, when an officer in a red cloak abruptly enters the medical tent, where you lie like a pulsing corpse. He flips through a list, scans the names, and stops at you. Alive. Good, he mutters, then turns to a nurse. Put his name on the honors list. And so you, who crawled through snow, ate rat stew, was shot by mistake by your own side, and now can't dress yourself, are honored. No one asks if you want it. No one explains why. Maybe because you once stabbed a Russian officer. Maybe because you were lying in the right spot when an errant shell hit the enemy line. Or maybe because the higher-ups need enough bodies to fill the empty seats at next week's commendation ceremony. The reason doesn't matter. What matters is you're still breathing, and they need a moving symbol, even if it's only half functional. You're taken to the rear, bathed first time in 6 months, given clothes, though the pants are torn at the knee and the shirt's too long, and placed in the third row of a ceremony at a small square by the old barracks. Beside you are others like you, missing arms, limping, hunched, blind, ears torn. A ragged band plays an off-key march. The French flag hangs on a broken pole, tied with a shoelace. A colonel gives a speech. You are symbols of courage, he declares, his gold-ringed finger glinting in the winter sun. Your blood has nourished this nation's greatness. He leans down to shake hands. When it's your turn, he grips your hand, the right one, since your left has no feeling, smiles, and hands you a star-shaped piece of metal on a crumpled red ribbon. A medal. You look at it. It's not heavy, not shiny, not special, but everyone claps. You try to smile, then you remember the first bayonet you thrust, the headless corpse, the rat stew pot, the eyes of the soldier who shot you by mistake. And you understand, they're not honoring you. They just need you to make them feel it was all worth it. After the ceremony, you're given a bowl of hot soup, thicker than water, actual soup. A stranger approaches. Congratulations, you're so resilient, he says, holding a notebook, probably a journalist. Tell me, what kept you alive? You start to answer, but your mouth hasn't healed. You give a faint smile. He doesn't wait. He writes, young soldier smiles, eyes gleaming, symbol of the unyielding faith of the French soldier. You want to scream. I smiled because my mouth can't close, but no one cares, because they don't want truth. They want symbols. And you, broken hand, lame leg, rattled brain, blurred eyes, have become one, a living statue, painted with media spit and crocodile tears. You're granted 3 days leave, no travel money, no escort. You find your own way. On the journey, you get lost once, faint twice, are cheated 3 times, and nearly freeze in an abandoned tavern. But you make it to your village. She's hanging laundry, mud-stained shirt, messy hair, sunken eyes. She sees you, doesn't believe, doesn't cry, doesn't scream, just stands, frozen. You stand too, trembling, unable to speak. Then she steps forward, touches your face. A scar, a look, a silence thicker than any curtain of war. That night, you lie in your old room, the ceiling still pitted. Wind whistles through plank gaps like battlefield howls. You stare at the ceiling, hand on chest, touching the medal. It's cold, reminding you that, even if you survived and were honored, you're no longer you. The next morning, villagers visit. They look at you like a curiosity. No one asks much. Just stare, nod, and say things like, you're so brave. France needs men like you. Your sacrifice won't be in vain. You don't reply. Because you know, if you told the truth, really told it, no one could bear it. How could you tell them you ate a live rat, stabbed men in panic, wished for death, when shot by mistake? That when you got the medal, all you thought was how to sell it for wine to dull your headaches. You don't tell. You nod, and keep a cruel truth inside. Sometimes, surviving is worse than death, and being honored is just a pat on the shoulder as they turn away, so they don't have to remember that war's cost isn't blood. It's people like you, not dead, but with nothing left to call living, just like they call looting, collecting spoils. Because after every victory, Napoleon trumpets, there's a ragged, bloody army rummaging through huts, houses, churches, corpses, leaving nothing but ashes. And if you ask, isn't that robbery? They shrug. No, it's the right of the victor. You've seen it. You've done it. In that battle, after the Russians retreated from a small town near Smolensk, your unit was ordered to inspect logistics in the area. Sounds official, but it meant break into villages, pry open doors, crack chests, take anything valuable, grain, wine, cloth, jewelry, even a Virgin Mary statue was pried from a wall for its thin gold coating. An officer said, "We're just taking back what these barbarians stole from civilized Europe. Don't overthink it." You entered a wooden house. The back door wasn't locked. Inside, 3 children and an old woman, trembling, no resistance, just clasped hands begging. A comrade shoved them aside, ransacked the kitchen. You went to the bedroom. On the bed, a silk scarf, a small painting, a silver cross. You picked it up, cold, heavy, your throat tightened, but you pocketed it, and you justified it. I'm hungry too. I'm cold too. I'm a victim too. A week later, you saw soldiers on horseback in new velvet coats, polished leather boots, laughing by piles of wine, and scented candles taken from homes. Another soldier carried a pearl necklace. He bragged, "Spoils from a little palace near Moscow. My wife'll love it." You looked at the silver cross in your pocket. You no longer believed in God, but you didn't dare throw it away. Napoleon encouraged looting, as long as you chose the right targets. Don't harm cities that could become empire hubs, but villages, countryside, civilians, their raw resources, stockpiles for the advancing army, sacrificial land for the strategic map. And so French soldiers, once carpenters, farmers, teachers, became vultures. They learned to pick locks faster, start fires with villagers' straw, mark gold here, on walls, so comrades wouldn't waste time. Kill a civilian, no punishment. Steal from an officer, hanged as an example. The distinction was clear. Kill the right person, rob the right house. It's a feat. Kill wrong, rob wrong. It's treason. There was even a spoils ledger. You saw a lieutenant list. Coats, fine wood, watches, wine, systematic, measured, divided, like a logistics company. Those who excelled in battle picked first. The wounded got a consolation share. And you, a lowly soldier, got what? A silver fruit knife, a scrap of curtain fabric, and a persistent nausea when you saw the old woman's empty eyes, begging you not to take her family's rice bowl. You thought you weren't like them, not base, not cruel, but when you stripped a wool sweater from a frozen boy to stop your shivering, you realized war doesn't create monsters, it just unlocks the one sleeping inside you. One night, you heard screams from a nearby house where your unit stayed, a girl's cries, soldiers' laughter. You started to intervene, then sat back, silent. Why? Because you knew stepping in would mark you a traitor to your comrades, and because you were tired enough to pretend you didn't hear, like everyone else. The next morning, blood stained the snow. No one spoke, no one admitted. The girl was gone, the house empty. One of those soldiers returned with a gold bracelet. He joked, "Spoils, smells like a woman." Everyone laughed. You didn't. You still kept the silver cross. Even now, it's deep in the pocket of the coat you wore back to the village. You don't dare hang it. Don't dare return it to a church. Each time you touch it, you see that bedroom, 3 children behind a curtain, eyes wide, hands clasped, as if you were God, when really, you were just a hungry soldier, looking for something to sell on the black market. Spoils, they called it, as if there's pride in taking from those who've lost everything. But you know, it's just robbery, sanctioned, encouraged, dressed in fine words, but still robbery. And in the list of what war steals, legs, arms, lives, souls, spoils, are just the sugar coating on a poison pill. You were a French soldier, then a prisoner, then a wounded man, then an hero. But when you look at that silver cross at night, the only thing you see in your eyes is someone who's lost the line between surviving and forgetting they were ever human. But you're not alone, because millions of Frenchmen live in a collective sleepwalk called patriotism, an illusion needed, framed and fed to you every morning through newspapers, speeches, and government letters, propaganda. No shots, no blood, no open wounds, but it kills, slowly, silently, effectively. You believed those words once. The homeland's in danger. Every man must take up arms. You believed. The French bring civilization's light to backward Europe. You nodded. Napoleon is the hero leading the continent to a new era. You were proud. But then you realized, if that light comes by bayonet and cannon, if civilization means burning villages, if the hero sits in a palace while you eat rat stew, maybe you were lied to. Propaganda isn't just in newspapers or posters. It's in how people look at you in uniform. They admire, they envy, they offer wine, women, pious blessings, and you, feeling nothing, still smile. Because if you don't, they'll ask, are you betraying the nation? So you learn to nod when your heart's empty. You become a talking mask for the homeland. When you were wounded, an artist came to the camp to paint. Heroes returned from the front. You scarred face, sunken eyes from sleeplessness, bandaged arm, were chosen as a model. He didn't ask how you felt, didn't care if you were in pain, just told you to gaze far off, hand on chest, as if you'd saved France. A week later, the painting was printed, hung in the city square. The courage of the French soldier. The caption read, "You saw it and wanted to vomit." Children are taught, war is where boys become men. The popular game in Paris then was Battle of Austerlitz. Kids playing French soldiers were praised as brave. Those stuck as Austrians, usually the weak or fatherless, were kicked out. They learn dying in battle is glorious. But none have smelled burning human flesh after a cannonade. Church joins in. The bishop preaches from a wooden pulpit. Those who die for the emperor are forgiven all sins. A mother who lost her son can't cry. She must smile and tell neighbors, "My boy's in heaven." A widow who weeps too much is hauled before a parish committee for dampening community morale. You heard that story while recovering and thought, even pain needs permission. Propaganda is stronger than opium. It lulls you to sleep each night, whispering, you're sacrificing for what's right. It stops you from thinking about what's really happening. It keeps guilt at bay. And when you see a comrade smash an old woman's head for her ring, you can still tell yourself, we're fighting for a stronger France. Once you heard a senior officer at a briefing, every campaign is a resounding success. All losses are within expectations. You froze. In that campaign you saw 3,000 die in 4 days. No water, no medics, no time to bury bodies. But if it's all within expectations, then you're never allowed to feel angry. The truth you realize is the most dangerous thing on the battlefield. It makes you not want to fight. So the whole machine is built to shield you from it. Whenever doubt stirs in the camp, a speech is given. A letter from Napoleon is read. My warriors, you are the divine arm of Europe's destiny. And everyone falls silent. No one wants to be called a saboteur. You once asked a friend, do you think we're doing the right thing? He looked at you, long, then shook his head. I think no one thinks anymore. We're just living to get it over with. Now, you no longer fight, but you see another war, reclaiming your heart from brainwashing. You see people still believing the myth, believing the numbers, believing the music blaring in squares. And you, survivor, truth knower, steeped in blood, fire, mud, and tears, can't speak. Because if you do, you'll be called a traitor, a morale killer, a defamer of the homeland. So you stay silent, like the silver cross in your pocket, like the bullet scar on your chest, like the nameless bodies somewhere in Russia, and the blood-soaked hands of the emperor. Propaganda doesn't need to kill, it just needs you to stop asking questions. And from that moment, it's won. Because a soldier doesn't need to die to lose, just forget how to tell right from wrong. And you, in the mirror each morning, see only someone who's very good at staying silent, but no longer knows what they once believed. And if you ever believed in God, that's been stolen too, quietly, systematically, without bloodshed. Because under Napoleon, religion wasn't erased. It was bent, twisted, turned into a silent tool under the empire's boot. Remember that silver cross, the one you took from a looted Russian house, kept as a spoil that never dared discard, look at, or kneel before. Because even if you no longer pray, a tiny, faint part of you believes someone's watching, someone who might forgive. But then you ask, forgive what? Killing for a map, stealing from hunger, staying silent from fear, or forgiving you for no longer believing in forgiveness. Napoleon knew religion's power. After the revolution, churches were burned, priests hanged, the Virgin replaced with a goddess of reason, carved from plaster. But when he took power, he didn't finish them off. He signed the Concordat with the Pope, not from faith, but strategy. The people need a God to fear, he said, and I need them obedient when they die. So churches reopened, but priests didn't just preach the Bible, they preached duty to the emperor. Sunday Mass became prayers for victory. In sermons, Napoleon stood beside God, and no one saw it as wrong, because it'd been too long since anyone remembered what was right. You once knelt in a lion church. After being honored, you sat amid clapping as the priest praised the great light from the east the emperor brings. The woman beside you cried, not from emotion. She'd just learned her husband died in battle, but she nodded to the sermon, because not nodding meant insulting the national faith. In the Italian campaign, you saw monasteries turned into supply depots. Statues of saints were removed to hang dried rations. Priests' wine cellars were drained overnight. An old monk begged, "Don't take the Virgin's statue." The reply, "Did the Virgin ever fight a war?" You didn't laugh. No one did. The statue's head was broken, tossed in a courtyard corner, like spoiled goods. Religion didn't die. It was reshaped, a tool to soothe collective pain, like opium but with a cross. People went to church not to confess, but to hear their suffering had a purpose. That your child died because God chose it. That your husband burned alive to cleanse national sins. That the nation needs blood. And if you object, you're defying God. Once a priest said, "Faith is the candle lighting the way." You wanted to ask, to where? Mass graves, bombed camps, the flies swarming my friends' bodies. But you stayed silent, because you knew asking would get you expelled and branded a heretic. A young soldier in your platoon, Mathieu, always wore a rosary. After each battle, he knelt in mud, praying for the fallen. One day, an officer caught him praying during a reload order. "Religion won't win battles," the officer shouted. Mathieu didn't argue. He bowed his head. The next day, he was gone. Some said sent on a special mission. Some said he shot himself. Some said no one cared anymore. You think of Mathieu often, not because he was pious, because he was the last person you saw who believed in something sincerely. You believe only in the pain of your unhealed bullet wound, in dreams where you run, but get nowhere, in the silver cross in your pocket, cold, heavy, silent, like an accusation. Religion, under Napoleon, didn't vanish. It was restructured, like a bronze bell, still ringing, but struck by another's hand. And you, if you want to believe, must accept God sides with the empire. That heaven flies a tricolor flag. That baptism is now honors. And if you can't believe that, you have no room left to believe in anything. You thought you could reclaim your soul through faith, but all that's left is a cross no one dares look at long, a sermon edited by the state, and a man in the dark, whispering to himself, "If God's here, he left long ago." And if anything still ties you to the old world, the one before blood, fire, and lies blackened every memory, it's the letters. Those small crumpled papers, written by trembling hands, sometimes stained with blood, mud, or tears, holding the last fragile thing you have, longing for home. You wrote dozens, to your wife, the one who sat by the wooden house's window, mending your shirt when rain came, who laughed when you tried fixing the kitchen roof, but broke 2 beams, who held you tight when the army came to recruit, as if holding tight could stop the war. You wrote her lies. "I'm fine, eating, sleeping." You didn't mention being shot by mistake, held in a rat camp, sleeping on corpses, hearing blood boil in your ears. You didn't, because you didn't want to kill her last shred of hope. and because you weren't allowed. You knew well, letters from the front never reach their recipient whole. Before sealing, an officer reads them. If they contain anything harmful to rear morale, they're burned, edited, or lost. At first, you hid truths in vague phrases. We're heading east, really being chased. We have full medical care, really lying with corpses. But when an officer threw your letter down and said, "Stop writing grim stuff, she doesn't need to know you're rotting," you stopped writing truth. Then you learned to write fake letters, proper syntax, slogans, optimism. We believe in victory. The great emperor always thinks of us. The return is near. And you signed, your husband, the loyal soldier. Sometimes you froze writing that line because you didn't believe you were still human, let alone loyal. You asked another soldier, "What if she doesn't get my letters?" He shrugged. "She'll think you're dead, and really you are, just not buried yet." His words silenced you for hours, not from anger, because they cut too deep. Letters from home to you were read first too. Each envelope opened at a checkpoint, read aloud for a clerk to note. Letter from wife, no seditious content. If it expressed worry, grief, or doubt about the war, it wouldn't reach you. Or if it did, it'd be a sanitized version, words swapped. "I miss you, come back safe." Though the original said, "I heard some from our village were shot by mistake. I'm scared you're one." You kept one old letter in your coat for months. The only one you believe wasn't read first. Your wife sent it through a smuggler, a salt trader, who passed your village. In it she wrote, "I don't need you to be a hero. I just need you back, no matter what shape." You cried reading that, but you didn't reply, because replying meant official channels, and someone would read it before you. Cross out each word like crossing out your voice. You stopped writing, though every night you thought of 100 lines. Today's colder than usual, but thinking of you keeps me from shaking. I saw a wildflower by the camp, purple, like your scarf. I trust no one, but I still trust you. Those lines live only in your head, then vanish, like the last honest faith left in war. A comrade, Louis, wrote weekly to his 7-year-old daughter. He even drew pictures, simple ones, a cat in a basket, a son with a hat, a cart full of bread. Then one day he was called to the camp and warned, "Stop the sentimental stuff. Your daughter doesn't need dreams. She needs to learn to be strong." He stopped writing, but each night he drew on an ammo box lid with charcoal, then wiped it clean. You know, war doesn't just kill with guns, it kills every letter, thought, whisper. It makes love need permission. It stops you from saying "I love you" without fear of censorship. And if you can't write, read, or trust letters, are you still human? Or just a corpse that holds a rifle, stands at attention, and stays silent on cue? One night, you dream you're home. You walk into the kitchen. She turns, smiles, hands you a letter. "You never sent a word," she says. "So, I wrote one for you." You open it. Every line, every word is what you thought, but never wrote. You wake, chest aching, eyes stinging. And you know, the worst pain isn't not getting letters. It's no longer having the faith to write one. War can steal limbs, voice, memory, but when it steals the words you meant to write, you know it's stolen you. And who started it all? Who was the one every letter had to mention with reverence? Who appeared on coins, in textbooks, in the mouths of crowds, and in the dreams of mothers hoping their sons would become heroes? None other. Napoleon Bonaparte. You once believed he was a great man. The day you were dragged from your village, you thought, "At least I'm fighting under a genius." As you waded through mud, chewed moldy bread, heard cannon thunder like the sky collapsing, you told yourself, "He knows what he's doing." But later, seeing bodies piled up for some nameless hill, you began to wonder, is he truly a genius, or just a power addict who spells glories with blood? No denying it, Napoleon had talent. A man born on Corsica, not of noble blood, speaking French with a thick accent. Yet he climbed to a throne, defeated nearly every major European kingdom, built an empire. It sounds like a fairy tale. And yes, from afar, through rose-tinted history books, he's the embodiment of human ambition, from nothing to something, from something to immortal. But you're no longer looking from afar. You were part of his army, saw glorious victories, traded for layers of human flesh, saw strategic decisions that threw soldiers into death as bait, saw him turn his back on Moscow, leaving tens of thousands to die of cold, hunger, and wolves, then declare, the campaign succeeded politically. He didn't need anyone to love him, only to fear him. When he crowned himself at his coronation, refusing the Pope's hand, he declared, I alone grant power. Bold, perhaps, but also the start of a personality cult no different from a religion. You heard officers talk of him like a god. He can read maps backward. He remembers every village on the march. He never makes mistakes. But you know, they only spoke of when he was right. When he was wrong, he blamed the weather, his subordinates, fate, and the scariest part, he made you believe he was right, even when he wasn't. You remember a battle in Germany. Rain poured, ground slick, supply wagons stuck, soldiers starved. Everyone said to delay, but the order came. The emperor says advance. The result? A massacre. French soldiers trampled each other fleeing, yet the next day's official report, enemy repelled, our losses negligible. A lesson in courage. And you, not yet wounded, read it and nodded, though blood on your boots hadn't dried. That was Napoleon's power, making you doubt your own memories. Did the people love him? Maybe, but what did they see? Arcs de Triomphe, majestic equestrian statues, portraits with blazing eyes, a man bringing order after the revolution's chaos. No one saw the wounded camps, the orphaned children, the widows waiting for letters that never came, the nameless graves scattered across Europe like footprints of a ravenous beast. You once wished he'd lose, but when he was first exiled, you felt empty, not from pity, but because for years all your suffering was justified by one name, Napoleon. When that name vanished, you had no way to explain why your life was so shattered. Then he returned. A year later, like a ghost, landed in France. Crowds poured into streets. Soldiers sworn to the new king, switched sides instantly. They called it the 100 Days Return. You called it a power addiction never cured. You didn't follow him this time. You stayed in your village, watched from afar, heard news, smirked when he won again, froze when he dragged France to Waterloo, a final gamble where the losers were still those never asked for their say. And when he lost for good, exiled to St. Helena, far from all eyes, statues and parade music, you didn't gloat, you sighed, because you knew, even gone, he lived in the dreams of soldiers who once shouted "Long live the Emperor" amid mud and blood, and in your memory, he didn't die. He still rode, cloak billowing, smirking arrogantly, pointing to the horizon, saying, "Forward." You no longer believe he's a great man, but you don't dare call him mad, because he wasn't. He was perfectly sane. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he did it so well he brought Europe to its knees. Genius leader, yes. Power addict, also yes. The question isn't who he was, but why the world let one man decide the fate of millions. You have no answer. Only one certainty. If someone asked you today, after everything, would you serve under him again? You'd look at them, long, then turn away, silent, because your silence now isn't reverence, it's caution. And that's the last thing a man who once believed in Napoleon can keep for himself. Caution, because you've seen too many who stood close to the emperor, only to vanish without a sound. The higher you climb, the easier the wind sweeps you away. And if a lowly soldier like you could be crushed to dust, those closest to him, courtiers, spies, lovers, were even more disposable, like paper scraps after reading. You saw them, the ones beside him, not on battlefields, but in the Tuileries, at banquets, in fog-shrouded command tents. Some carried maps, some wine, some whispers from other nations. They smiled at him, bowed, called him Europe's light. And when he turned away, they wiped their brows, as if surviving a fever. Courtiers, those who knew when to stay silent, smile on cue, step back when the emperor frowned, outlasted battlefield soldiers, but never securely. General Berthier, Napoleon's right hand, who could redraw army positions from memory, wrote his letters through dozens of campaigns, killed himself after Napoleon's exile. Why? Some say fear of retribution. Some say he couldn't live without an emperor to serve, or maybe because he knew too much. Spies, another breed, no uniforms. They wore civilian clothes, drank coffee with enemies, sent back coded lines. Napoleon used them like a hidden dagger, silent, swift, precise, but a dagger, when no longer needed, is the first thing tossed. You met one at an Eastern supply post, a Parisian accent, eyes that never closed. He whispered, "I once sent word that buried an entire army. Now I haul cannon ammo." He laughed. "You didn't." And then the lovers, beautiful, bright-eyed, silk dresses, velvet shoes. They didn't wield swords, write orders, or talk politics, but they knew everything. They heard his sighs when lights dimmed, lay beside him after defeats, whispered what no one dared say. Josephine, his first wife, adored like a goddess, was discarded for political reasons. They say he cried, signing the divorce, but he signed, because even in love, he never loved more than power. After Josephine came Marie-Louise, the Austrian princess, a treaty prize. Their wedding was lavish, but when he was exiled, she didn't follow. She stayed, lived quietly with their son, never looking back. Love in Napoleon's world was a commodity. Keep what's useful, replace what hinders. You wondered who among them, courtiers, spies, lovers, lasted longest. The answer, no one. Or rather, no one survived as themselves. Some died for knowing too much. Some lived but stayed mute forever. Some lived in luxury, but slept nightly, knowing one emperor's frown could erase their entire line. Even Napoleon's son, the King of Rome, found no peace. After his father's fall, he was sent to Austria, renamed, rebranded, living in a palace, forbidden to say, Napoleon. He died young, 21, from illness, or because history drained the Bonaparte bloodline, no one knows. You realized, living near power is living near a fire pit. You can warm yourself, but you can also burn at any moment. You, a lowly soldier, thought yourself insignificant, but now you see you're lucky, because no one noticed you. No one made you a symbol. No one demanded absolute loyalty. You got no banquets, no poems, no princess's embrace. But you also weren't discarded when your use ran out. You, at least, kept your name. Remember who you are, know what's real blood, and what's perfume. Those closest to Napoleon dissolved into the myth. And myths never let supporting characters live long. And as you look to the horizon, where a black cloud swirls over the old battlefield hill, you whisper, keep your distance, even one step. Hold on to the human part left. Because sometimes, surviving isn't not dying. It's not being swallowed by the shadow of those the world calls great. And then Leipzig happened, where that shadow stretched too wide, too fast, too mad, and was burned to ashes by reality's light. The battle they called the Battle of the Nations. But you, and other soldiers, called it something else. The meat grinder. Over 300,000 soldiers flooded that small city from France, Germany, Austria, Russia, Sweden. They didn't know they were entering Europe's largest battle ever. They only knew they were hungry, cold, exhausted, herded like sheep into a place with no escape. You were one of them, called back to service just months after thinking you'd escaped the nightmare. France needs you one last time, they said, but you knew every last time could be forever. Napoleon still gave orders, still talked strategy, still drew red arrows on maps as if ink could change reality, but no strategy could defy the truth. He was surrounded on all sides, and his army was now just husks that moved. You remember the first morning in Leipzig. The ground shook from cannon fire. Smoke rose from all horizons. Your comrades stood packed on a bridge, hands trembling with rifles from cold and fear. Some vomited yellow bile, some mumbled prayers, some scribbled on their sleeves, name, village, wife's name, as if someone would collect their body and read. Cannons roared for 3 days, relentless. You heard nothing but ringing in your ears and blood pulsing in your skull each time someone fell beside you. Men died like flies, shot, trampled, lost and killed by their own side, by mistake. A man in your squad, Jules, was cut in half by a shell. His upper half still gasped, "Mother." By the 4th day, the ground wasn't ground. It was mud, blood, guts, debris, rags, broken bones. Leipzig wasn't a city. It was a gaping graveyard. But Napoleon still ordered attacks, still shouted to commanders, "Hold the line," while he prepared to retreat. You don't fully recall what you did that night. Only a bridge, thousands pushing to cross. Then, it exploded. Some say the French blew it to stop the enemy's pursuit. Others say a mistake. An officer misheard an order. To you, it didn't matter. You stood on one side, watching hundreds thrown into the river like ants swept off a table. Some swam, some didn't. All sank. You crawled from Leipzig like a walking corpse, face blank, holding your rifle like a crutch to keep from falling. Each step, your boots stuck with more blood. The man to your left fainted. The one to your right shot his own foot to avoid another battle. You did nothing, thought nothing. You'd passed the limit of feeling. The next day they announced, Leipzig campaign, heavy losses, but our army's spirit remained strong. You laughed. A dry, rotten wood laugh. Spirit? Spirit? Where was spirit in the unburied bodies? In the wide open eyes unclosed, in the broken voice of the last comrade you bandaged and left behind. No spirit, only bodies. French bodies, Russian bodies, Austrian bodies, bodies of the dream of an immortal empire. Leipzig was the grave of illusion. You survived, but you know you didn't return. Never truly returned. Part of you stayed forever on that blown-up bridge, in Jules's scream, in the eyes of a Swedish soldier who died clutching his daughter's picture. Leipzig wasn't just a military defeat. It was a collective wound carved into a generation's bones. And Napoleon, he lived a few more years, exiled, wrote memoirs, blamed others, justified himself, rewrote the story to stay the unyielding hero. But you, and thousands of others, know the truth. Leipzig wasn't a lost battle. It was a mass execution. No noose, no sentence, just one man too certain of himself, and too many who silently obeyed. You left Leipzig with legs intact, but not your soul. And if someone asked, which battle scared you most, you wouldn't say Austerlitz, Borodino, or Moscow. You'd whisper, Leipzig, then fall silent, because sometimes terror doesn't need words. Just look into the eyes of someone who was there, and see not tears, but an empty void. Silent, forever. But if Leipzig was the grave of hope, Russia was the slow knife, gutting the entire empire. Because there you didn't just face enemies, but something invisible, cold, relentless, winter.
You were there for that retreat.
The most infamous in European military history. They didn't call it a disaster at first. They called it a strategic repositioning. Napoleon didn't admit defeat. He only said, we'll return in order. And then he left you, and over 400,000 men, in a snowy wasteland, with no order intact, no faith warm enough. You remember the first night after the French withdrew from Moscow? The sky black as burnt coal. The city behind you still burned. No one knew if French or Russians set it. Wind cut your face like a razor. Comrades wrapped themselves in rags, animal hides, stolen blankets. Everyone shivered, teeth clattering like spoons dropped in empty bowls. Some had no fingers, not from fighting, but cold. Some didn't wake by morning, dead cleanly in sleep, like a candle snuffed by wind. What did you eat? Horses, then dogs, then boot leather, some boiled belts, some chewed candles. Some, you knew, though no one said. A soldier vanished. 3 days later you saw bones hidden behind trees. No one asked. No one dared. What killed wasn't bullets. It was distance. Between you and supplies. Between you and home. Between you and yourself. Each day you walked like a ghost. No feeling. No goal. Just one thought. Don't die today. Death walked beside you. Not in a black cloak, but in a fur cap. Russian insignia. On horseback, picking off stragglers. No one heard the shots. Only the thuds of falling men. Cossacks hid in forests, struck like lightning, speared exhausted soldiers' backs, then vanished like wind. You thought death by blade, bullet, or fire was terrifying. You were wrong. The worst death was being left behind, in snow, alone, no one looking, no one remembering, no one stepping back to pull you along, because if they stopped, they'd die too. Once you and 3 soldiers shared a rock-hard bread scrap. One swallowed too fast, choked, and died. The 3 of you ate his share. No tears, no prayers, just chewed. Discipline collapsed. Officers fled. Soldiers fought for spots on wounded carts. Those with guns shot those without. The strong trampled the weak. The dead weren't buried. The living stole their coats for an extra layer, and Napoleon, he left early, escaped on a private sleigh, guarded by elite troops, said he had to return to Paris for political stability. What did you call it? Abandonment. When you reached the Berezina River, where only a few trembling wooden bridges spanned freezing water, you thought you'd survived, but it became a second hell. Bridges too narrow, Russians caught up, cannons fired, men pushed, men fell into the water, never resurfacing. You saw a mother clutch her child and jump off, no other way out. You clung to the other side, wet, cold, empty. You don't recall how you survived. Maybe you were tougher, maybe lucky, maybe death was too tired to take you. When you reached France, they greeted you as a hero. You felt no pride. You felt sick, because in your head, every clap echoed like breaking bones, and every thank you for your sacrifice reminded you of the soldier who carried you a stretch, then died, midway, too weak to go on. They asked, was that retreat a failure? You didn't answer. No word was enough. It wasn't just failure. It was exposure. A silent confession of an empire that thought itself invincible, defeated by its own arrogance. You no longer believed in anything that could melt in snow. Not medals, not slogans, not pride. Only boots, if they still walked. Only the person beside you if they hadn't left. And the wind reminding you that stopping meant being buried without earth. When they built a monument for the heroic Russian retreat, you didn't attend. You sat behind your village's wooden house, holding the wooden spoon you used to sip snow-mixed grease. You didn't need monuments. You just wanted one night's sleep without dreaming of ice, without hearing someone call for their mother, then stop breathing. That retreat needs no telling, because for those like you, it's still there, in the ache of your feet when it's cold, in the stab of your heart at the first snow, in the distant look when someone mentions victory, because there was no victory in that march. Only survivors, and the shadows they could never shake. But before you could shake off Russia's shadow, another blow lands. Napoleon abdicates. No more brass trumpets. No more tricolor flags flying. No more orders thundering from Tuileries' stone walls. The great emperor, once hailed as Europe's son, now sits in a carriage, quietly leaving Paris, exiled to Elba. And you, who took bullets in the name of glory's warrior, are officially nobody. At first you thought it was freedom, a morning without a muster call, a night without sleeping hand on rifle. But then you realize when war ends, society has no place for you. You're no longer a soldier, no longer a national pride. You're a walking corpse, a living relic of a war everyone wants to forget. You return to your village. The roof sags. Your wife looks 10 years older after years of hopeless waiting. Your son doesn't recognize you. Neighbors stare with a mix of pity and fear. No one asks about the battlefield. No one wants your stories of death. They only ask, can you still work? You try the blacksmith shop, but your hands shake. One finger's gone. Old wounds swell with the seasons. You try. Each morning, you push coal carts, grit your teeth through pain. But one day, you fall. The boss shakes his head. I need someone stronger. So you sit at home, day after day, staring at the rotting ceiling, hearing wind whistle through wooden doors, waiting for someone to need you. No one does. Even the government doesn't know where to place you. Veteran aid. Limited. Public works. Prioritized for the young. You're not weak enough to be cared for. Not strong enough to be used. You're an invisible in-between. A silent burden no one claims. One day, the village holds a peace celebration. Music. Wine. Flags. You're invited to speak as a veteran who served under the emperor. You step up. Everyone claps. You look at the crowd, then stay silent, because you don't know what to say. All grand words were buried with friends who never returned, and any feelings left in you, if any, froze the day you crossed the Berezina. You bow your head, step down. No one blames you. But from that day, no one invites you again. Your wife suggests, try teaching. You could tell stories, but when you tell the truth about screams, bayonets, through chests, waist-deep snow, meaningless deaths, the children cry. Parents protest. They say you spread gloom, so you go silent again. An old soldier, you survived Borodino's shelling with him, now sells chestnuts at the market, one arm gone, teeth missing, still wearing his old cap. He greets you. The Empire's dead. Just us two know it ever existed. You smile, a joyless smile, because it's true, and that truth is too heavy to carry for life. They say you have war neurosis, a fancy term for you can't sleep, flinch at a dropped nail, vomit at the sight of a slaughtered chicken. The doctor says, rest, recover, but rest from what? When in your head, cannons still boom, comrades still scream, and bodies still float under bridges. One night, by the fire, your wife dozes in her chair. You take out the tarnished medal, given at that barracks ceremony, and throw it into the flames. It doesn't burn, just makes a small clink. But to you, it's the sound of a chapter closing, not glorious, not tragic, just done. When word spreads that Napoleon escaped Elba and marches on Paris, you don't cheer, don't worry, you sigh, because you know, if he truly returns, reclaims the throne, redraws maps, calls muster again, thousands like you will be torn from beds, thrown into carts, dressed in uniforms, and made to forget their names. You don't want to die a second time, but you also don't want to live like this forever. And you realize life after war isn't for soldiers, it's for victors, or those who never held a gun. You're just a leftover, a footnote, a small line in the annals. Unknown soldier, survived Russia, but you know the price you paid, and you know the real burden isn't you, it's the memory you carry, a silent tumor you can't cut out. They tell you to cheer up, peace is here, but you, after everything, want to ask, peace for who? Not for people like you, because for you, war never ends, it just changes form. It's from battlefield cannons to the silence in your heart, from death by bullets to a slow death in society, where they forget you existed so they could live. And then, one winter morning, before the sun breaks the clouds, you look in the mirror. Reflected is a gaunt face, uneven beard, sunken eyes, wrinkles without pattern. You look closer and think, who's that? You survived, but the man in the mirror isn't you. Not the 17-year-old who hugged his father before leaving. Not the young soldier who believed in homeland, honor, glory. Not the man who dreamed of returning to his wife's arms. No, the man in the mirror is just the husk, left after all you buried. Faith, memories, self-respect, and your own name. What's your name? You probably still remember, but how many years since anyone called it? Beyond the barracks soldier, or the workshop bosses he can't work anymore. No sound acknowledges you as an individual. You've dissolved into an invisible collective, those who survived, but no one wants to mention, rummaging through your old chest, a torn belt, a scrap of army cloak, your wife's crumpled letter from Borodino. You feel no pride, just a faint stomach clench, as if each item drags up a memory you tried to bury for years. Mud, blood, screams, panicked eyes, and the times you stayed silent when you should have spoken. You remember it all, no order, no coherence, like a river breaking its dam, faces without names, freezing nights under corpses, steps through red snow, dying eyes, begging, and your own cold stare when you pushed someone off a supply cart to live. No one taught you how to live after war. They taught you to shoot, kill, endure, but not how to face yourself when it's over. They thought, peace heals all wounds. They didn't understand some wounds don't bleed. They seep, and they reshaped the whole person. Now at the market, the fishmonger calls you old veteran. By the river, kids run past, unaware you did anything for their peaceful lives. In the tavern, people talk of Napoleon's heroic feats, like fairy tales. No blood, no guts, no bodies. You smirk but say nothing, not from apathy, because you know if you start talking, you won't stop, and no one can handle the truth. Once you tried writing a memoir, but by the third line you stopped, hands shaking, not from pain, but fear. Fear of seeing yourself not through memory, but words. Fear of truth you can't erase. Fear of admitting you survived not from heroism, but stubbornness, and sometimes cruelty. You killed, stole, turned away from cries for help, not because you're evil, but because if you hadn't, you wouldn't be here staring at that mirror. And that's what chokes you most. You lived, but you don't know if you're still worthy. That night, you step outside, foggy, you look up, no praying, no hoping anyone hears. Just stand, just breathe, one deep breath, to remind yourself, you're still here, not whole, not needed, but here. Then you go back in, close the door, drape cloth over the mirror, not from hate, because you've seen enough, you know who you are, and you know no one else can fully understand, but you survived, not a feat, not a tragedy, just reality, raw, cruel, nameless. And if someone asks, what do you remember from the war, you'd answer, without thinking, I remember I was once someone else. Someone else? A version warped, worn, torn apart by things that, if you spoke them, no one would believe, because they never heard, or rather they were never taught to hear, because in ninth grade history books, they don't tell your story. They tell of Austerlitz's victory, but not the night before, when you clutched an empty stomach, teeth chattering, hearing the man beside you whisper, I want to go home. They tell of Napoleon's genius, but not the thousands of bodies left in Russia's snow, curled like frozen rags. They tell of heroic marches, but forget you walked 40 kilometers daily in torn boots, blisters, egg-sized, tying your foot's bones with leather to keep them from breaking. They tell of patriotism, but not the nights you heard comrades sob or saw a soldier cut his hand to get sent to the rear. They tell of the people's king, but not how you stood in rain in a crumbling formation, hearing he'd fled in a carriage first. No one tells of your first kill and vomiting for 3 hours. No one tells of nearly being shot for dozing on watch. No one tells of wanting to end it all because you couldn't stand rats gnawing bodies at night. And no one tells that war didn't make you a hero. It made you a stranger, surviving by learning to ignore, not see, not feel. In textbooks, battles are chessboards, moves, outcomes, consequences, but you never saw blood stick to a chessboard, never smelled burning flesh or heard screams as guts spilled. And if someone reads those books, then asks you, was it really that glorious? You'd look at them and say, yes, but only for those who didn't die. They don't teach that glory can be molded, bent, redefined, that the same act can be heroism today, crime tomorrow. They don't teach that being a soldier isn't just holding a gun, it's learning to stay silent when the man beside you starves to death. They don't teach that kindness can be a crime, and surviving sometimes means betraying your own conscience. In history, you're a number, a dot in a loss chart, an unknown soldier, but you remember names. Jules, who joked he'd open a bakery after the war, killed by a stray bullet. Mathilde, the tiny nurse who gave you her last bread, buried by a shell. Renee, the former teacher, reading poetry nightly to the squad, dying in feverish convulsions, no one dared touch for fear of contagion. And you, who hoped to return with a story worth telling, now get only polite nods when you speak, because they don't teach anyone to hear raw truth. You hoped history would remember you. Now you know, it doesn't matter. What matters is you remember that amid polished lies, you hold one unedited memory. They don't teach that sometimes the right thing isn't allowed, and the wrong thing is called orders. They don't teach that fear can make a wise man do the stupidest things. They don't teach that surviving never a reward, but a burden. They don't teach that some nights you wake thinking you're in a Russian camp, only to find you're home, and it hurts more than when you left. And they don't teach one crucial thing. War doesn't end with a treaty. It ends when the last soldier stops dreaming of it. You still dream, not good dreams. Nightmares, muffled screams. You holding a headless child, not knowing where to set it down. Bone-chilling cold, though you're under blankets. Gunpowder smell threading through your hair. They teach history, but not sorrow. Not how to forget. Not how to forgive yourself. You were once a child, in a classroom, hearing of Napoleon, his feats, his legend. Then you grew up, became part of that history, but not as they told it. Now, you want to go back to that classroom, tap the desk, look at the dreamy kids, and say, remember this, in every feat, someone lives a lifetime with nightmares, because the most important things are what official history never tells. And if you think you've lived through hell, you're right, but only if you're a man, because if you'd been born a woman, then, sorry, your hell has no trenches, but lies in your kitchen, your bedroom, your very womb. You thought being a soldier was the worst. Dragged from home, thrown to the front, life and death, a trigger's pull apart. But at least you saw the world. You had the title warrior. You could die for glory. Women, they died in silence, in darkness, giving birth with no doctor, washing clothes in hand-numbing cold. waiting 3 years for a husband's letter, only to get a scrap saying killed in action, cause unknown. Your wife once told you, when you left for war, she had to stay silent. When neighbors asked, any news? If she showed worry, they'd say betraying the fighting spirit. If she smiled, they'd call her heartless. She had to cry while baking, tremble while raising a child, pine for news while bracing for the worst. And no one honored that. No medals for nights she stayed up with a feverish child, or dreamed you were dead. You came home on leave once, in your 2nd year, saw her, skin darkened, hair thinning, eyes red, but she still smiled, cooked, folded your muddy boots. You didn't ask how she lived. You thought, my battlefield is the real one. Now you see, you could at least run. She, trapped in that wooden house, waiting, gritting teeth, keeping the model wife image, fought every minute against oblivion. Some women couldn't wait. They were disloyal if they remarried, but scorned if they stayed poor widows. Society crushed them with both feet, one of hypocrisy, one of abandonment. A young girl was forced to marry a double amputee veteran to thank the nation. An old mother begged for food after her son died in battle. Aid never came, and the government called her a parasite. You saw a cart of vivandières, women following the army, selling water, cooking, mending, tending wounded. They weren't called soldiers, got no pensions, weren't listed as contributors, but they died too, raped, trampled in retreats, left in mud, cold, silence. There was a girl in your camp, Elise, not a nurse, not anyone's wife, just a follower, trading bread for news, songs for coins, her body for a spot by a warm tent. One day they found her in a snowy field, dress torn, face down, no investigation, no questions, just one soldier whispering, maybe the enemy, maybe us. You didn't cry, didn't feel anger, felt empty, as if that was normal. And that's the horror, numbing to half of humanity's pain, because they wore no uniforms, they weren't worth remembering. After the war, you saw women claw back scraps of life, baking, weaving, hauling water, healing, raising kids, and still called weak. You saw wives wait 10 years, only to greet a shadow of a man, unable to love, talk, just sitting hours, staring at the yard, breathing like his heart might stop. You realized women then didn't choose to fight, but war chose to crush them. They held no guns, but bore wounds. Wounds without blood, as deep as bullet holes. Wounds of loneliness, waiting, being forgotten, being the rear, as if they were a stage awaiting the main act's return. And now, as you write what you remember, you pause, thinking of your wife, gone last year. You never thanked her enough, never said you're a warrior too, but you remember clearly, she survived the war like you, not with guns, but hands, heart, nameless resilience. History doesn't teach that. Textbooks don't write it. Grand speeches don't tell it. But you know, if you died in Russia, your wife would have lived, still fighting, still raising your child, still enduring a society unforgiving of women with tears. And you wonder, if there's another life, if you're reborn, if you're not a soldier, but a French girl in 1805, could you survive? You're not sure, but you know one thing. Being a man in war may be hell, but being a woman then was a hell no one bothered to name. And that's the cruelest truth. And it's the final truth you grasp. After a life thrown into slogans, stuffed with speeches, painted in textbooks, history isn't as they tell it. It's not a glorious painting hung in a square, nor a chain of logical victories. History, if you've lived it, if you've been crushed by it, is bloody, foul-smelling, and utterly unfair. You were once a number, on a march map, a red dot moving along Napoleon's charcoal arrows. You thought you were part of something grand, a great cog, turning the world. But now you know, you weren't a cog, you were grease. Poured in to keep the machine running, then splattered out, soaked into the earth, no one bothering to pick you up. History doesn't record those who carried bodies, doesn't build statues for the ones tying gunners' bootlaces. No songs sing of nights you huddled in a tent, writing a letter you knew wouldn't be sent. All that sinks to the bottom, and on the surface they fish out a few names, a few stories rewritten by victors, polished, censored, hidden. They say Napoleon was a genius, but no one mentions he ignored warnings of Russia's winter, leaving over 400,000 to never return. They say France left its mark on Europe, but what mark? Mass graves, widows, fatherless children, burned villages. Churches turned to armories, faith twisted into a political tool. You don't deny history's value, but you stress this. It's not poetry, not a strategy game, not a logical chain of glory leading to modernity. It's a chain of survival, and most times, the survival of those who looked away fastest. You thought, if we win, the suffering's worth it. But after Leipzig, Russia, Berezina, after seeing friends die unrecorded, you know no death is worth it. No victory big enough to erase the scream of a young soldier, legless, waiting to die in a forest. You used to hate losing. Now you hate winning more. Because you know, in every we won, someone sits silently in a corner, clutching cold rice, eyes avoiding wife and child. Because victory's cannon salutes echo the cannons that killed. You were trained to be a soldier, but no one trained you to be a person after war. No one told you what it's like returning, unfitting in the society you defended. No one taught you to live with guilt, with memories, with invisibility, and worst, no one apologizes. No one says simply, we were wrong, you shouldn't have been thrown into that grinder. Because history, especially written by winners, never admits fault. It redraws, blurs, renames, repaints, and keeps spinning. You believed in civic duty. Now you believe in smaller things, a hot meal, a tight hand clasp, a sleep without snow dreams. And if you could leave something for the next generation, it wouldn't be grand words. You'd say, please, if you ever want war again, think of people like me. Picture me, in mud, holding a friend's body, trying to close my eyes to unsee his face. Picture me, never daring to speak it, fearing I'd scream instead. Because that's what they don't say. War doesn't end on the battlefield. It lives on in survivors. It bleeds through generations. It lurks behind medal ceremonies, in the vacant eyes of a veteran amid a crowd singing anthems. You don't demand honor, don't need statues. You just want truth called by its name. That history isn't noble, isn't balanced, doesn't teach lessons. It just happens. And it crushes anyone unlucky enough to fall in its path, like you. And if anyone still believes living in history is glorious, you'd tell them glory is perfume, expensive, used to mask the smell of corpses. You lived, saw, endured, and you don't want anyone to do it again. So if anyone reads this, you have one wish, that they won't repeat their predecessors' mistakes, that they'll remember. History isn't just for glorifying, it's for caution, that if it returns, there'll be another like you. And this time, there might be no one left to tell the tale. The story of the unknown French soldier, under Napoleon, isn't just a painful memory of a distant era. It's a mirror reflecting human corners, easily overlooked in modern American society. In our time, where patriotism, sacrifice, and serving the nation are still echoed, this story reminds us that behind every act called glorious may lie silenced voices, unheard survivors, and women bearing war's weight without mention. That soldier, who ate moldy bread, slept with rats, marched 40 kilometers daily, then returned as a social burden, is the image of many American veterans today. Soldiers from Iraq, Afghanistan, or overseas bases often return jobless, undercared for medically, and most crucially, not heard with true empathy. The lesson isn't don't enlist, or don't fight for your country, but protect and care for those who protected us, with real policies and compassion. Don't let them, like the soldier in this story, ask who am I now, after shedding their uniform. And don't teach history as just victories, tell the foul, unfair parts too, so future generations know civic duty doesn't end when guns fall silent. It continues, through understanding, sharing, and not forgetting. If this story made you see history through new eyes, subscribe to not miss the truths hidden behind glossy pages. Thank you for joining to the end. See you in the next video, where we'll keep uncovering historical myths, not as you thought.